and declare a quorum. So meeting's ordered, declared a quorum. So go ahead.
Paul Polito to my right. Paul is with Sutter and Vanderwall. He's here tonight because Kim's on vacation in Europe or doing something like that.
He's gallivanting in Spain somewhere.
Sydney McCoy is our new Director of Public Services. So you may be familiar with Antonia's position, so that is his position. And Carolyn Woodiel is our new manager of the Carnegie Library. So
I'm gonna change the schedule around just a little bit and move the treasurer report up.
Oh, Doug, you don't need to do that if you don't want to.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I can stay the whole meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So never mind. Okay. Public comment. Seeing no one from the public, and we'll move on. Go ahead.
Doug, if you don't mind, I mean, I could just,
Yeah, go ahead.
get a word from the
Yeah,
foundation.
please.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, not at all. I just wanted to express thanks for all of you that came to the gala. I think this is the first trustees meeting we had since then. It was a great success for making progress towards the annual request for literacy and outreach and some artist in residency programs. We were able to net 125,000 from that gala, and it's a good head start on the way towards raising the rest of the money that we'll need to fulfill your request. So it's just a great partnership, and really the new system we have in place now of communicating early with you all about your annual request, I think was really helpful as far as giving people a reason to give. So thank you for that. And then I just want to say I was up at Nobo today, and this weekend they're having a big youth arts festival on Saturday that was from funding that we secured with the Broncos money through the foundation, that came through Boulder County.
Oh, nice.
And so that should be a fun thing starting at noon up at Nobo, and also fun to see the playground. I was watching them use a front end loader, put some boulders into place there in that catchment area just below the new playground. So good things happening up at the new branch. Anyway, that's all I want to say.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great event, and all should attend next year. And hopefully we'll raise even more money, or you'll raise even more money.
We have to find the other photographer, whoever was taking pictures, because I don't see any of us in the set that came from the foundation. So there was somebody else taking pictures.
Maria Tormos was
So
taking.
it'd be fun to see those too.
Yeah, let me see if she can make them available. I know she sent me some things, so I know I saw some.
All right. We're gonna consider any comments on the meeting minutes from September 17th. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 17th, 2024.
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the minutes from September 17th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting minutes is passed. All right. Now, Miss Caroline Woodiel?
Yes,
Okay, Woodiel. If I'm saying that wrong, let me know.
you're okay. No worries.
Okay.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay, so hi everyone, I am Caroline. I am the new archive manager at the Carnegie Library for Local History. And I'm here to talk to you all a little bit about Carnegie and let you know about some of the changes that we have that have started this week. All right, so I'm going to talk about what Carnegie has been doing while we've been closed, what those new services and changes are starting this week, why these changes were selected and what services they provide, as well as an update on our grand reopening from Saturday and a couple of other things I think are fun to know about what we do. Okay, so the Carnegie Library for Local History has been closed to the walk-in public since 2020. In that time, the team at Carnegie has been helping patrons through scheduled appointments, our Ask Carnegie email requests, program and event support, processing collections to make more materials available, and we've been keeping in contact with the local history community in Boulder County and in Colorado. So what's new and what has started this week? The biggest thing is that we have new hours. So we are going to be open, and we were open today from Tuesdays from 10 to 4 for appointments. On Thursdays and Saturdays, we're going to be open 10 to 12 for appointments and from 12 to 4 for walk-ins. So the first day that Carnegie will have walk-in public hours will be Thursday, October 17th since 2020. So these new services are all part of a hybrid service model. Included in that are now 10 hours of appointments per week, as well as 8 hours of walk-ins. We are also going to continue providing email services from the Ask Carnegie email, and we are bringing on 2 new archive specialists. We also have a little bit of a new look going. So what you see up here is a mock-up of some wonderful window shades that are currently being printed and are going to be hung. They are pop of color with some historical photos on them to try and draw the public in and see something different is going on in the building. We've been rearranging some of the furniture, tidying the place, and there has been some awesome repairs that have been done. The roof has been fixed, as well as some water damage on the inside. There's been some updated painting. So it really, I've been told it feels wonderful inside by people who have been coming in.
That's a lot that's been happening. I'm sorry, didn't mean to do that.
No, you're good, no worries. So why we chose to do the changes we did, and why a hybrid service model? Well, one of the main things was we did a survey of 20 archives in Colorado and across the country. We found that 55% were still operating in an appointment-only service model since the pandemic started in 2020. So the appointment-only model has become a big part of the types of services that archives offer. So what we'll be doing is we're doing the appointments and the drop-in hours so that we can hopefully meet the needs of 2 very, well, maybe not very different, but 2 different user groups. So we can allow for that quiet old school research, as well as allowing drop-in research and browsing by the general community. And again, we will also be continuing research via email inquiry, so that expands our services and accessibility to a wider geographic range of people. So this hybrid service model is expected to balance our employee time between processing and public services. And it should do that by increasing the amount and the types of collections we have available, as well as direct public assistance. So some of the impacts of these changes is during the closure, the public had about 6 hours available to do on-site research a week. As of this week, those public service hours have tripled. So we are now doing 18 hours of on-site public research and browsing, and we will be evaluating the total hours and the way we distribute those hours via appointment or drop-in in 2025. We're hoping this will allow us to better identify the needs and meet what our patrons need from us moving forward. And also, for the first time, Carnegie will be handling in-person appointments and responding to virtual requests at the same time. So we did not do any virtual requests until 2020. So as we move forward, we're not taking anything off the table. We're just going to expand upon it. So I keep talking about appointments, and you might say, what in the world do these appointments entail? So they are a reservation made by patrons for a 2 or 3 hour slot of time to conduct research on a specific topic. They get one-on-one assistance from our archive staff on how to use the materials, as well as we help researchers find more information on their topic, either through our collections or we refer them to other collections we know about in the community. So archive staff will research and pull materials in advance of the appointments. So there is a lot of preparing that goes with these appointments. And because the appointments are outside walk-in hours, they provide that quieter environment that some of our researchers do prefer. And then what can patrons do during our walk-in hours? So the biggest thing we like to highlight with that is you can still do archival research during our opening hours when people can walk in. We just can't guarantee there is space for everyone who walks in to sit down because you need to spread out on a table to do that research. And the staff time may be more limited. We can't necessarily give one-on-one time, as well as it may not be as quiet because we have folks coming in and out throughout the hours we are open. You can read. Carnegie is home to an amazing local history book collection, as well as the rare books at BPL. You can browse and hang out. During our opening hours, patrons can just enjoy the space. I'm not sure if everyone has been over to Carnegie, but it is a really, really neat old 1906 building, and it just has a wonderful ambiance when you walk in. So sometimes it's just nice to go in and enjoy it. Folks can use our microfilm readers to look at old newspapers. We are the repository that holds all of the daily cameras. So if you wanted to just go into the 1940s and look at ads, you could sit there and scroll and see how advertising was done. You can research genealogy. We have a physical genealogy collection related to Boulder, as well as general resources online for folks to do broader genealogy. You can read the police blotters, or my favorite thing is the Daily Camera has books based on the day where you can look and see what's happened in history. So you could go pull up your birthday and find out what happened on your birthday in 1906. And then the most popular thing that I have seen that we do is people like to come in and research their house. We have a ton of real estate documents. And so people like to come in and learn more who lived there, what changes have been done to their house, what it's looked like in the past. It's incredibly popular. So just a quick update on the grand reopening party on Saturday. So we had that from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and we had 157 people attend, which was outstanding. And this is a picture of a brief snapshot of one of those moments at the party. We had hands-on activities and browsing available, and we started a usage survey that was given out via iPad about usage at Carnegie, and we're going to continue to collect data with that survey over the next few weeks. And just a couple of other things I think are interesting to know. So our appointments are not only for serious researchers. If a patron wants assistance in person with our collections, we're happy to help. Like if a high school student is working on a research paper, we would love to have them come in and we could help them for 2 hours. It's not just for people working on a book or writing a thesis. I've mentioned a couple times that we help patrons with research questions via our Ask Carnegie email. So if a patron cannot or does not want to come in, they can email us their research questions and we will spend up to an hour researching it for them. So that is a really valuable service that we offer. And since Carnegie is an archive, we do have some slightly different rules, which we are going to talk about in the policy section, I think right after this. Some of those rules are patrons cannot bring food or drinks into Carnegie, and pencils are the only writing utensil allowed. The other interesting thing about Carnegie that's nice to know is that the same archivists who are helping the patrons with research and in person, they spend the days that Carnegie is closed answering those email inquiries and processing the collections. So they do all sides of the work in there. So that is my overview. Does anyone have any questions?
What's most exciting for you in this new position in this work?
The most exciting thing for me personally, I think, is the scope of being able to collect Boulder's history. There is so much out there still to collect and make available to people, and there's such a strong interest in the community. That's probably the most exciting part to me.
So if I wanted to look up the daily cameras clips of a specific subject,
Mhm.
would I go in during open hours and just ask to see that?
Yeah, you could come in during open hours. We would help you find that information. You could email us and we could figure that all out in advance, let you know what we have, and then you could come in during open hours or make an appointment, or you can make an appointment and we can help you find it. That would be something we could help in all 3 ways.
That's great. And do you think that the facility is sufficient for modern archive storage going into the future?
There's definitely some things we need to improve as far as storage, and we are running on limited space as those collections expand. There are a lot of climate needs for different materials. For instance, we have a lot of negatives. We have some film. Those really need to be in proper cold storage that doesn't currently exist in the Carnegie building. So I definitely think there is room for improvement moving forward as we secure more collections on some of those items.
It was neat to see everybody excited about reopening there. Yeah.
It was great, yes.
Do you know how heavily the hours have been used historically in the past in terms of appointments? Were they pretty heavily utilized?
So people were using the appointments, but it wasn't during closure hours. It was just when it was open. And so essentially my understanding when the building was open before was it was mainly just those appointments. People could quietly walk in and look around. So we're kind of trying to we're hoping to, by having those appointment hours, allow that quiet experience, but also maybe have a little bit more community engagement during the open hours that maybe we weren't having before. But it could turn out everybody just wants appointments. I don't know that we'll know until we're a good couple months into this what exactly everybody wants. But hopefully this experiment will give us some answers.
Yeah, we're certainly interested to see data 3 to 6 months from now once it's leveled out a bit.
Definitely.
I have a question. How do you determine like what kind of collections or materials you want to archive? I mean, I know there's some of that in this policy, but like, do you guys get wind of something and you're like, oh, we need to collect that, or I don't know how it works.
Yes.
But imagine I don't know anything about libraries, so.
No. So we go about getting collections in a couple different ways. You can passively get collections where you have people that show up and say, hey, I have this amazing thing. I would like you to take a look at it. And then we would review the collection to see if it meets our guidelines, if it's something that we're looking for. It's much like you would do with a book collection. You take a survey of everything you have in your holdings. You know your community, you know the history, and you say, these are some spots where we are missing things. So we want to actively collect in those spots. And that's when you go out, if you're not getting them passively, you go out and you seek those collections. And you can do that in various different ways. Community, right now, a lot of the way Carnegie has been doing that is through interpersonal connections. And the previous archive manager before me, Wendy Hall, was exceptionally good at making connections in the local community in order to get donations. So we're hoping to continue that as well as potentially branch out and see what other kind of collections we can find. When we have more space, which is going to be happening soon with Gun Barrel, we're going to be able to move some collections there. We'll especially be able to do a broader assessment and I think actively look for collections that help fill the needs of the historical gaps we may have within what we have now.
Kara, do you have anything? Any questions?
No questions here. I'm just trying to think of things I want to research now.
Okay, should we move to the policies then? Caroline, are you gonna stick around for the policies as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So Caroline and her team went through some policies online. Made some recommendations for editing them based on what changes are happening. The marked up version is the first version after the cover memo on page in your packet. There are like 4 different sections. Fortunately, we didn't capture in the markup Carolyn's excellent comments on why some of these changes were made, so. Yeah, do you all have questions or you want to walk through the changes first? To do.
I think we walked through them.
They seem pretty straightforward.
I didn't really.
Are you comfortable just walking them through the changes?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the first change. Make sure it's the guidelines for handling archival materials. And what we recommended was the second bullet point was only referring to photograph collections. And so we wanted to broaden that as we do have some architectural collections that do have use restrictions on them. And also to clarify that copying and taking photographs in verbiage that was a little bit more accessible to users. So that's just broadening the policy so that we're honoring the usage of all collections.
Sorry, I did have a question on, it is more on the appointments. Is there gonna be like on a policy on how many appointments, like somebody can't book like every appointment, or do we need to have a policy on that, or?
That hasn't been a need yet.
Okay.
It hasn't been a problem.
Yeah, hopefully if there's somebody taking it up, you can always bring it back to us and we can put in up another policy on that.
I
Definitely.
mean, it would be really cool though, if tons of people wanted to come in all at the same time.
Deal with that
I
problem.
mean, that would be amazing. But I mean, you could, I mean, if that were ever the case, you could just do it like your meeting rooms and the study rooms, right? Something
Right.
online.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Okay.
but that would be awesome.
Carolyn, do you have experience with other like libraries like this one?
Yes.
That's why I just wanted to ask my question related to like what you've seen, related to the use of pens and like, how do you control that with folks, or how do you, just politely ask people to put their pens away or don't commit their pens, or I don't remember seeing any signs that said, leave your pens in your pocket or whatever.
So whenever we pull out materials, we walk people through how to use them. And one of the first things we tell them is that a pencil or your computer is the only thing that's allowed. And typically, once we explain to people, we don't use ink because if you get ink on a document or a photo, we cannot remove it. They're very understanding. So usually we tell people up front, and if you give them the why, everybody's usually pretty good about it.
Yeah, and I do remember like the little bin of pencils that are there in the tables, but, okay, I just wondered if you'd seen any rebellion
People are pretty good about it, the understanding.
okay, good to know.
We're on the local history collection policy.
All right. So on this one, when we're describing the type of collections we want to collect, it previously said individuals and families who reflect a unique aspect of Boulder history and culture. So we chatted as a team and we were thinking a more inclusive word to use would probably be distinctive aspect of Boulder history and culture. We're not only collecting people who have done one of a kind things, and there's a connotation with unique that maybe some average, like everyday citizens, like a normal person like me, I wouldn't feel that anything I've done is unique. But yet there could be something that my family has or that I have that would be distinctive to Boulder history that we would want to collect. So we wanted to make sure that we were communicating that we're interested in taking documents from all sorts of different people, and photographs and digital material, and that their collections are welcome, even if they aren't, the mayor or somebody of high importance within the community, that the average citizen is important to Boulder's history as well.
Well, if you worked there 40 years, put your picture up next to the mayor, I guess. Or isn't there an old mayor? Is that who that was up there?
Ruth,
Andrew Carnegie's pictures on the,
isn't it Ruth, isn't,
Up
in the back.
in the back.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ruth Carell?
I've been through it a few times over there. Carnegie,
Yeah.
okay, now the
It's Ruth Carell, isn't it?
Ruth Correll, yeah.
Yeah, it's the,
Oh, on the second.
yeah.
Second floor.
Okay, so the next one, the Carnegie Library for Local History Research Policies and Fees. This one had the most changes to it. There was some outdated wording. First off, we got rid of the please do not send simultaneous requests to the Museum of Boulder or Boulder Genealogical Society. That is an issue that used to happen in the past that doesn't really happen now. Everyone has their areas of specialty, and so we're not getting multiple requests at the same time. We also clarified the research time It had previously said that genealogy research was up to 1 hour by Carnegie staff, and we changed that to be all topics were available to do research up to 1 hour. And then we made sure the wording was clear because it used to say you could pay somebody for additional things. We changed it to, for research exceeding 1 hour, please visit the archive in person to access the materials directly. In order to help all patrons, we only have about an hour of time per request. So then,
Generous, isn't it? That seems really generous.
it is. And then we clarified if folks need specific help with genealogy, that is when they contact the Boulder Genealogical Society. That wasn't necessarily clear with the former wording. Then we took the photocopies in the scanning section, we made them uniform so that we were making the same amount of photocopies as scans for people. And then we changed the prices of the copies to match all the other branches. Our prices were slightly different. We thought uniformity made sense. And again, there was a charge for large volume scanning, and that's just something that we have not been doing. So we limited it to 10 pages of copies or scans for patrons via email or mail. And then after that, they need to either come in person or they could have somebody else come in on their behalf. So that was the main changes for that one. Any questions on that?
So can we, I have a couple things. One, do we ask to see somebody's library card for anything?
We do not. We don't check out books, so we,
No, I know, but I'm just, yeah,
yeah,
anybody who comes in is considered a patron.
yes.
And so I just wonder, as a district, like if there should be some definition around district patrons, and that if you're, an out-of-town researcher or something like that for your novel or book or whatever, like, shouldn't they pay for something?
I don't think we could charge them.
I mean, for like the 10 copies.
Oh, for the 10
Like,
copies.
or something that they're getting,
But they could probably get a library card no matter what.
yeah, or research. I know, but I mean, unless they were asking for something more. But I mean, I don't know. It's like a service to the district, and it seems like it could really
Yeah,
extend much broader, but I don't know that. I don't know who.
the district is also only about a third of the county, Bonita, and the archive has been, we collect things that are Boulder County related. I mean, so there are other archives in Boulder County, but we have not turned away county maps, county data, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So we do collect all kinds of Boulder County related information, and 2/3 of the people in Boulder County we'd be asking them to pay. I don't know. I don't know that it's substantial. We've never generated significant revenue from any of the copies anyway. I don't know
And
that.
people don't overdo it. I mean, 11 copies, 10 copies, whatever. Probably not. I just wondered, if there just needed to be some definition around the district.
We get some out of towners in there like copying all kinds of crazy stuff. Like we're gonna come down hard on Bonita.
Okay. That's all I need. You have to write that down.
No, I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, they're out of town researchers, but it's.
They're gonna pay after 10 copies. So like,
Yeah.
like 20 cents,
Yeah.
$2 every 10 pages.
Is that what Kinko's charges?
That's pretty,
That's cheap.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I mean,
I think that's cheap.
yeah.
What's the charge? Yeah, for a copy?
At Kinko's,
Yeah. 18 cents?
25 cents.
Yeah,
It's considered 25, 30.
really more
30
than
cents,
20.
35.
Yeah.
I haven't, you don't need to copy much anymore. I mean, I think people just take pictures of it with their phone.
Yeah.
Now.
Unless we think it's costing the district on the order of thousands of dollars, it's probably more overhead to track it than it would be to just ignore it.
Check how many reams of paper you go through and,
Yeah.
all right.
All right, thank you. Just,
I have just a quick question on the limit on via email or mail asking for 10 scans or 10 copies. Is that just to kind of like make sure nobody's using too much of like staff time? Is that what that
Yes.
app is
Yeah.
about? Okay.
Yeah, because we'll have people who will request that you copy everything in 5 different folders. So we need a limit on that.
Focus.
Yes, yeah, and it brings them in because then if they can't,
Mhm.
if they can't get the entire collection emailed to them, then they come in and see the materials in person, which helps limit the amount of light damage a lot of these things get too. So it's a win-win.
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Have we had any accessibility related requests or materials in the collection? Things
Not,
like making stuff available via Braille or in other formats?
no, not that I'm aware of. I've only been here since July 15th though, but
Not in the recent past, no.
okay.
Want to move to the next one? Oh, wait, local history and genealogy research. That was already on the next one.
Yes. Okay, so on this one has a lot of things crossed out. There were separate instructions for making an appointment to do genealogy. Our appointment policies are the same regardless of the topic at this point, so we removed those. And then there was an additional set of rules that were listed that had no approval on the website. And they were very similar to the reading room guidelines. They had different wording. But they basically cover all of the exact same things, and the reading room guidelines have been approved. So we thought if these haven't been approved and they're redundant, it would be confusing to leave them. We might as well remove them.
So it's not that we are actually getting rid of any of these requirements. It's merely that they're already covered in another document.
Correct. Yeah. And the only thing that would be different on here is that this last bullet item that says photographs may not be photographed or scanned with the exception of, that is again, that's covered under the changes we've made previously. We're making the copying of anything uniform. And so we're not just singling out individual collection. And the rules are more specific in the reading room guidelines, which is also helpful. So under the ones that we're removing, it says due to the nature of our collection, children must be supervised by an adult at all times. Whereas under the approved reading room guideline, it says children under the age of 10 must always be supervised by an adult.
But the reading room guidelines are rules of conduct for the library, or
No, they're
different?
specific to Carnegie.
Okay, specific to Carnegie. Okay.
Yeah, so like if Andy goes in there on a rainy day and tosses his raincoat on the table, we're throwing him out in the rain and keeping his coat like that. That's pretty clear.
Okay,
That's for the food and drink.
food and drink, and
Yeah.
could someone come in there and just sit and read?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right,
Encourage them to.
yeah.
If you said this, I missed it. I'm sorry. The Boulder collections 511 and 780. What are 511 and 780?
Those are from the city, and I believe they are photographic collections. I think the 780 for sure is a photograph collection. I don't know the 580 call number off the top of my head.
780, 511.
511, yes, yeah. There are, yeah, so those were photograph, 780. 780, I believe, is a set of photographs where people gave us digital copies, but they kept the original for themselves. And so we do not own the full copyright on those. People can use them, but they have some use restrictions. I do not know what the 511 is off the top of my head. So, but that it would be a collection with use restrictions, so that's why it was singled out.
And in this case, do they belong to the city or could they eventually actually belong to the library?
They belong to the library.
Oh, okay.
They gave us everything in the Carnegie Library.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think, like, is it normally, like in other library systems, would they normally have like a branch like Carnegie? Or is it unique that Boulder has it?
It's fairly unique.
Okay.
Not a lot of public libraries have an archive. Not a lot of public libraries have an almost 50-year-old oral history program. I mean, what Boulder Public Library District has is very, very unique. I can say from what I've experienced here, looking at the library, I come from a nonprofit special library background. And so oftentimes a library like Carnegie would be separate. But the fact that it's available to the public and it is so well supported is an incredibly unique and wonderful thing that Boulder has.
It's more large urban libraries. Large urban libraries do. I mean,
Yeah.
smaller libraries like Boulder, many of them, like I worked in a library that deaccessioned everything in the 90s, right? So everything, they got rid of everything, found a nonprofit partner to take it over, and then it was just neglected, basically, wound up in a church basement. It was a bad move, which I opposed at the time, but it was like, again, the maintenance and upkeep of it doesn't come without a cost, but then again, what's the value, right? Is somebody preserving the history of
Right.
the community, and I think there's an expectation in the community that somebody is. It's just who is that? It's us in this case, it's the library.
Norland, the CU library has the archive.
Universities, almost many large universities.
I think that's all of the policies. Caroline, you're new to the district, right?
I am, yes.
And can you just, I should have probably asked you, can you just explain your background and where you come from, where you're from,
Yes,
that kind of stuff?
yeah. This is why I just started in July. So this is why I don't know what collection 511 is off the top of my head.
Mathematics, but I don't know why that's in there.
Hmm.
511 is
No,
mathematics.
It's not Dewey.
Oh, okay,
No.
all right.
It's unique.
Oh.
Says we're certain.
I'm like 511 is math. And Dewey.
No.
Right.
Yeah, so my background is I came from Phoenix, Arizona. I worked at a small nonprofit special library and archive called the McClellan Library. It is a library and archive at the Irish Cultural Center there. So before I came here, I was the head librarian and archivist for them. And I was in charge of all the library and archive services, programs, collecting. I did their bookkeeping. I did a ton of different things for them. But I built their archive basically from scratch. We did a plethora of exhibits. We brought in foreign diplomats. We did very, very odd historical focused things around Ireland. It was a very interesting place. And when I was in my interviews with Jennifer, I said the job description, it was interesting because it had these very unique things listed, and I have done all of those unique things. It was very, very interesting. And even though the topics are very different topics, the scope of work, they're very similar between the two facilities, which is really, really neat.
Nice.
Well, I'll move that we approve all of these policies.
Okay, yeah. I'll second that. Any discussion? All right, we're all in favor of approving the Carnegie Library policies as in the packet, say aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, the motion carries and the policies are approved. Thank you so much, and I know this means a lot to the community, and I know I don't know if you were there on Saturday, I didn't get to see you, but there's a ton of people that just really, really like this stuff, and when we did the ballot measure, that was a whole contingent of people that were really excited about getting Carnegie back into production. So thank you. We're excited to see what you do. Maybe we'll have you back in a year to see, what you've done, and what you're working on, and yeah. Oh, let's make sure that that presentation is posted. If it's not in the packet, but
Oh, yeah.
we'll post it to the. Okay, you post it later. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Carol.
all. I appreciate your support for the library too. It's very important. So thank you.
Yeah, we are.
You get to experience winter here in Boulder. a little different than Phoenix?
Yeah, so I was from Louisville.
Oh,
before.
okay.
So yeah, no, I'm used to it.
All right, so, that's great. So let's go to the budget. Is this Mr. Font?
So
Or,
I am turning it over to Jennifer Farrar. She did a ton of really, really good work, and I hope you appreciate it as much as I did. I think we have a really good document for you guys to consider tonight, and if all goes well, we'll publish it tomorrow for the state and send out a press release. Take it away, Jennifer.
We'll publish it for public.
Yeah, for public.
Yeah, so, all of this, I have to say, this has been the most pleasurable budget building experience I've had in my 22-year career. Life.
Wow.
It still was a long process, and it required a lot of, different people to contribute. So we started this work back in June. And thanks to my colleagues, Steve Kaki, Adrian Boniakowski, and Amy Shum, they were, instrumental in helping to coordinate the budget submission process and to, develop the strategic priorities. They are also starting work on building out a work plan that's based on the approved budget, so that the whole staff has the big picture view of what we're working towards next year. So the leadership team, after we created the strategic priorities, they focused their request to meet those priorities. They submitted their requests and we reviewed them in July. And then we went and met with each individual budget manager and discussed the needs and made any changes. So that's kind of the process that went into all of this. The purpose of this presentation is to cover the main points in the budget memo that you received in your packet. We're planning to deliver this presentation again, if you wish, during the November 19th meeting, prior to public comment, so that they can kind of get the big picture. At the end of this, there'll be time for questions. We can take questions throughout. And then we also have about 6 or 7 questions for the board to consider. And I was hoping that Doug could walk you through those questions at the end. And those were at the end of your memo. If there are changes tonight that you'd like to make to the budget, we'll update attachment A, which is the budget sheet. And we'll post that tomorrow by end of business, so that it is up available to people for the 30-day review period. So this is really focused on you as the audience and the community as the audience. So please let me know if you'd like any additional information or anything needs further clarification. And that is one of our questions at the end, is what input you have. So we'll go right into strategic priorities. So these are the 4 strategic priorities, and we tried to focus these around some of the goals that we had in the master plan, the ballot promises that were made during the campaign, and then also listening to your priorities over the past year. We intend to continue using data-driven decision-making to assess and refine new and expanded programs, services, and resources for the library. And I'll talk a little bit about that near the end of the presentation. We're also still very much focused on workplace culture building. We've hired, I want to say, like 60 or 70 people. We have, we're proposing to bring 18 more on next year. A couple of those will have focuses on training and development for the entire staff. As I mentioned, we're working on a collaborative work planning, so everybody kind of knows what the big picture is. We're going to be rolling out a job performance and coaching program, and doing some leadership development of our staff, and then also develop a rewards and recognition program. So lots focused on employee engagement.
Is that speaker not working means it's not recording?
Kara, can you hear us? Yeah, I think she can. I think everything's going. I think it's at the air.
New
Kara, can you say something real quick?
I can.
Yeah.
That's what that means. We can't hear you, Kara, just as a heads up.
Okay.
Can you change
We'll try to fix it.
speaker on the, yeah. Yep.
I know, not that one. Leave that as is.
Oh.
And you right
There's-
down below there where it says select a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Now Kara, say something.
Something.
There you go. Okay,
Yeah, it's using the TV, so it's not as loud.
that's okay. We can.
So the third strategic priority is to continue to strengthen and grow community connections through opening our gun barrel library, expanding outreach in the community, and improving convenient access to the library's offerings. And lastly, continue to improve safety and efficiency of the facilities and spaces. So we're going to be focusing on our favorite topic, deferred maintenance. We're going to also put a focus on assessing and improving the management of areas such as the playgrounds, public restrooms, and the main library's underbelly. So those are kind of the structure for which we based our budget on. So this slide shows all of our resources that go into building our budget. And primarily it is property tax revenue, that's 79%, that's $21 million. We're recommending that we carry over at least $5 million of unspent funds from this year for capital projects, so 18% of the budget. And then we're also recommending that we carry over the entire balance of the estimated interest income. So at the time I made the slide, it was at $512,000. I think it's just around $700,000 right now. So we've made some money since then. We also are going to be receiving some grants and a little bit of personal property tax revenues. So the grants are coming from the Colorado Department of Education and the Werner Charitable Trust. Probably around $36,000 will be granted to the district for the collection. And then we have requested from the Boulder Library Foundation $125,000 for outreach, maker, and literacy programs. So as I mentioned, these estimated numbers, the estimated interest income and the estimated capital carryover, these are placeholders. We're actually recommending that the full amount of the interest income and the total remaining funds from 2024 be appropriated. But that is your decision. It could be just the 5 million and the $512,000. It could be less than that. If it's less than that, then we'll have to make some decisions about not doing some things that we're proposing. So that's one area we're going to ask for your direction on at the end. Okay, and so in the box on the right-hand side, it's covered up. So the total of the pie is $27,168,828. And we have programmed every penny of that in the budget spreadsheet. We're estimating that at the end of 2024, after the carryover is appropriated for capital, that we could have anywhere between $3 and $7 million. And I highlighted this, and there are other highlights throughout the presentation of places where I made changes from what's in your packet. And these changes will be in the final presentation. I'll go into how we get to this range on the next slide, and you also have a copy of that slide because it wasn't in your packet. We also have, 2,550,000 in restricted reserves. Now, all the funds that we have are commingled in the bank and invested, and we draw out monthly the amount of money we need to pay the bill. So everything stays invested until it's used. And so it's not like a separate bank account where we keep our reserves. It's all in the same place.
Jennifer?
Yep.
So the estimated capital carryover, and can you remind me, I mean, that wasn't planned, right? I mean, some of that was already budgeted to be used somewhere else this year?
Yes,
that
we're not going to spend it.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So like in future years, we probably wouldn't have
Not as
that
much.
type of pot of money. We want to use
Yeah.
the money that we,
Yes.
okay.
This year was unique because we had to ballpark estimate a lot of
Right.
costs and we over budgeted for personnel. And I wouldn't say we over budgeted, but we moved some money into capital that we just don't have the capacity to spend this year. So
Is that the separate restricted reserves?
No.
No,
Hmm.
that's,
Apart from that, yeah,
Okay.
I think they'll go through
Okay.
that on the
okay.
spreadsheet.
the restricted reserves are what's required by state law that you carry a reserve.
Okay.
And I believe that it represents 12% of the operating budget. It's not part of the operating budget. I think the legal requirement is like 3%. So we have, you know,
And you had said 8 to 10, I mean, 12, we feel like is kind of in wheelhouse.
Okay.
and that was appropriated in 2023 to the reserves.
And that's that roughly 2.5 million number.
Yeah, at the bottom.
And the interest from that goes back into the reserves or goes into the
Just go
kind
to
of
the pot.
thing else.
Yep. And that 512 is probably some of that interest earned on.
You're also earning interest because you get your money in March and June, April, and
Yeah.
then spending it throughout the year. Yeah.
So what's not included on this pie is, but you'll see in next year's statement of activities reports is the outstanding encumbrances that we have. Those will automatically carry over and that amount fluctuates. So I don't have projections at that time, but the kinds of things that we have encumbered are for the design work we're having done at Carnegie to kind of narrow in on the costs, the 3 different levels of costs. We also have a team working on design work for some shades, some electrical shades that would go on the cafe in the teen space. We have some other design work on a new boiler or supplemental HVAC system for Maine Library. So there's several different projects that are kind of in the works where we've encumbered the funds for those. If they're completed by the end of the year, the encumbrance will be liquidated and the bills will be paid and we'll move on. If the work continues into 2025, then there'll be some money from that encumbrance that will roll over.
Those aren't big numbers in the context of the overall budget.
No, not. I'd say less than $1 million.
Yeah.
Unless we get a big number for gun barrel and we encumber those funds this year.
Did you say the interest income is like closer to 700,000?
Yes. Yep.
Cause it's like almost $17 million.
Right.
It's 20
Yeah.
now that we have.
When did you do that slide?
What, 2 weeks ago?
We did, they did give us an estimate. I know that, I can't remember what it is. I'm sorry, it is something like nearly $75,000 to $100,000. We will begin maybe this month or next to draw down the amount of money that we have in the bank. And then in December, we'll extract 6 million plus to pay this back.
What percentage of that is the money we invested? Like all of it is, so there's no other.
There's a couple $1 million in the bank, but we also earn money on that.
Okay.
It's the difference of maybe a percentage point.
Okay.
So money in the Chase bank account also earns,
Yeah, right.
as does the money invested in college.
So we all knew that we weren't going to spend the entire budget for 2024. We had to make some projections and broad estimates to make sure we had enough money to cover our expenses. And now that we know more, we're further along in the year. I've done some more fine tune the projection. So we kind of have a better idea of what's going to be left at the end of the year. And this is, I'm going to walk you through this, but this is where we get that $3 to $7 million range for fund balance. So I think the question that a lot of us have is how much do we expect to have at the end of the year? So from the balance sheet, and that's in your packet, I ran this balance sheet yesterday to get the most up-to-date number. And I took the line that's called,
You're looking at the last page of the packet.
no,
This
this
is-
is a balance sheet. This is in your, so
It's just right in front.
your total fund balance.
It's not, okay, I'm sorry.
Is it page 30? I don't know what page it is. Anyways, that's where I got it from.
Okay.
It's
Does it say Boulder
Amount of money-
statement of activity actual versus budget or?
the balance sheet.
Oh, it's the one in,
No.
it's the one on, okay.
Yes,
Oh, it's the very last.
yeah.
It's 54, 51.
Yep.
Maybe we could make our page.
So I ran this for you. It stops at September 30th. The one I ran yesterday, I did year to date. So the fund balance was more accurate and includes some more of our expenses. So that amount yesterday was $23,845,000 or $845,740. I'm estimating from the $3 million-ish we have appropriated for capital right now that we haven't spent, that we'll probably spend 1.5 million. So we're not going to spend all the capital that we have appropriated. Similarly, I estimated the personnel expenses at 3.2 million for the rest of the year. That's 8 pay periods. I made an assumption that all of our vacancies are filled. And I used actual expenses or actual costs for current staff. So their current salary and benefits costs. And then I assumed the midpoint in our pay range for all of the vacant jobs. And then I added like a full cost of benefits. So like if somebody came in and took all the benefits. So it's a little overestimated, but not by much. The other variable in this number is we're not going to have all our vacancies filled all at one time. So those 8 pay periods, we might have 2 or 3 where all our vacancies are full. So there's going to be some room in this number as well, that will kind of contribute to the 8 million and the 3 million at the bottom of the sheet. And if you notice it didn't turn out on your copies, but the numbers that are in bold and blue are the numbers that I feel like they'll change a little bit. And the numbers that are not highlighted in blue are firm. So we still owe $6 million to the city of Boulder. We'll be paying that mid-November. And then I just swept all of the remaining balance for all the non-personnel costs, not capital, but things like our security, our cleaning bills, all our program things. And I'm going to assume that we're spending 100% of those just for the sake of this. I don't think we will spend that $2,474,358. I think there'll be a little bit left, maybe in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But to be conservative, I'm just gonna say, and plus it's really hard to really like hone in on each one of those little variables. I could spend the time, but by the time I finish, it would probably be at the end of the year, so it doesn't make any sense. And then you need to deduct the restricted reserves from the fund balance at the top, because they're included in that on the balance sheet. So if you do the math and you subtract all those numbers in gray from the 23 million, you get $8,115,266. That's probably the lowest amount of money we'll have at the end of 2024 after all the bills are paid. From that, we would deduct our recommended carryover. If it's just $5 million, we'll have this $3,115,266-ish left at the end of the year. It won't be appropriated in the 2025 budget. It's just money in our savings account, if you will,
Separate from the restricted reserves or coming?
right? Because those were deducted already.
So is there a reason, this is a part of it. Restricted reserves is, so the restricted reserves, whether it's deducted from the 23
Uh-huh.
or not, it's still, so the estimated fund balance FYE could be $2.5 million higher, but we would have to show it as $2.5 million of restricted reserves in
Plus-
next year's thing. So the numbers don't, but there's not a reason why we show it as a deduction. Because it's not being deducted anywhere. It's just
No,
removed from the total.
because
but it remains at the
we
bottom,
cannot
so-
spend it on anything. So we remove it from, it's like off limits money.
Yeah, but so then from the 8.115,
Mhm.
it's in addition to that?
Yes,
Yeah. So it's 10.66.
yes.
So what does this 3 million become then? Just extra money that we could appropriate
Yeah.
at some future point?
If you were like, hey, we need, to rebuild something.
And this,
It's,
that's all of this. So again, setting the restricted reserves aside, that is all of the extra money we have at that point. There's not other money sitting in some other funds. Okay.
That's it.
like,
So
like,
what relation does this have to the 7,450 number? The 24 operating fund?
Well,
balance?
that number was a really rough estimate.
Okay,
I had.
but it's
this-
effectively the same number. This is just a
Same
more
number.
updated estimate.
Yes,
Helps.
it's a range depending on the decisions you make to appropriate the carryover. It's either 3 million or whatever portion of that 5 million added to the 3 million. So,
In the other direction, if we carried over more than 5 million, that's also an option.
yes, that would reduce that $3 million number.
Thank you.
Makes sense?
on the other side though, you said 3 to 7 million.
Yes.
Ooh,
So if you said, we don't want to appropriate any carryover at all,
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. That,
you would add that $5 million to that 3.
get it.
So these are all kind of squishy, right? But I tried to make it so that what we're looking at is like the minimum. We'll probably have more than this, but not a lot more.
Yeah, this is worst case.
Yeah.
Or that 5 million we're carrying over. I don't know if you've done the one-to-one mapping, but presumably that 5 million of capital being carried over does in fact only pay for capital projects next year. We're not putting ourselves
But-
in a situation where our OpEx is now higher than we can sustain.
Capital and one time. Yes.
And we'll get to this later, but it bears repeating. So, it's
Still-
like the carryover, especially now, every year, and even in this budget, there's probably going to be carryover because it's going to be a challenge for us unless Meadows presents itself or something goes way over budget, it's going to be difficult for us to spend $5 million in capital expenses next year. So there will be carryover, but that will be consistent for the next 2 or 3 years where there will be carryover. Then it's a philosophical decision. Do we appropriate it as capital? Do we leave some of it aside as reserve? And there's not a best practice. Different library districts do it differently. Arapahoe approves everything, so that you just don't have to go through the appropriation process, which would require you to do it mid-year and adjust the budget again. They just appropriate everything and then you bring the contract decision in front of them. Other libraries put it all in reserve. And so then each time there's a need to pull from reserves, the library staff bring back to you a request for reappropriation and you adjust the budget as you go. You can do either way. It's entirely up to you. But for the next few years, as we address the capital backlog, there is going to be carryover and excess. that goes to, that we are planning to put into recommended carryover for capital expenses.
Yes.
But there's still the 5 million, there still in the budget facility maintenance?
Yes.
and, like replacing carpets and painting and that kind of stuff. It's not included in this 5 million
Correct.
of projects.
Operational funds.
Oh, okay.
And I tried to keep the operating money as close to the property tax revenues as possible.
Yeah, so like
That's
what you,
basically what I was asking.
what you,
Whatever we carry over any year should only be used for one time, so capital or one-time things.
you kind of looked at what we spent this year, I guess. You kind of have a good idea on replacing light bulbs and stuff like that. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
So we looked at, to build the budget, the base budget for operating, we looked at what we spent up through August. And then we projected the rest of the year out for those costs and we rounded up so that there's a buffer there. And like I said, in this number here, the remaining non-personnel expenses, I assumed we spent 100% of what we budgeted, even though we won't. I just don't think it's worth spending the time to figure out that it's $30,000 or $300,000.
Right, keep going.
Okay. Is this slide important for you to have in the final presentation or just the range on the previous slide?
I put this slide in the presentation.
Okay.
You might also want to think about. Just think about the public looking at this. It is a little confusing, the difference between this number and the number on that other sheet.
Yeah, well, the number on this one,
Or this, yeah, and then plus, and then in addition, that 7,450 number that's in the balance sheet as well. So
yeah, so
that's in the recommended budget sheet, basically. the
yes,
balance sheet.
that's gonna change.
Okay.
But a range in there. And I think I also mentioned it in the memo, so I'll make.
I think if we just want to make sure these numbers are, people understand these are all the same set of numbers we're talking about, just presented in different.
I will make it that way. I kind of think we don't need that detail, because that was just a question you had. If we just cover it as a range, because we don't know what we're gonna end up with, it should answer most questions and not cause confusion, but that's my opinion.
Just to say a range with $4 million, 3 to 7,
Mhm.
that seems a bit wide if I was a member of the public. I'm like,
Okay.
don't they know anything closer than that? That's just my reaction to that.
Okay,
Why I like this
This is
actually.
great.
why you want it? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
all right.
Well, the range is mainly because you're waiting on us to give you feedback on whether we actually carry over the 5 million, right?
Yes, yeah,
If we tell you tonight, we do plan to do that. Can you just eliminate that range and print whatever number you have here there as well?
yes, I can say approximately $3
That
million.
makes the range go
If I
away.
understood correctly, some of these are also,
Yeah,
assuming 100% spent.
Yes.
The range gets a lot smaller though, if we commit to this. I'm assuming the range at that point's 100 to 100 grand of range.
Probably something like that. So I can say on this slide, instead of a range, I can say approximately 3 million.
Yeah.
In fund balance.
I think that works.
That's where we land.
If you use that other slide, I would suggest maybe footnoting some of the elements there. That, why it's an estimate or something, just a sentence about some of the variables. Like you said, like the non-personnel expenses or something, just, I don't know.
I think that's, I mean, it says estimated there.
It does,
It's,
but
I think maybe
Maybe not-
with the blue versus the dark blue versus the light black
Mhm.
might be, but I do think this is pretty clear.
But it's a lot of money to spend. If you're saying that it's a spend before the end of the year,
No, next year. Well,
and the
2025.
remaining. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it depends, I guess. I'm just about timing.
Yeah, no, 6 million is a check to the city, so that's
Mhm.
kind of easy. And then what is looks like our
This
month,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then our monthly burn rate. And 2.5 is stuck in restricted reserves. So.
Yeah, I mean,
um,
Can you all hear me? Sorry,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I think like it's, at least to me, it's clear that like what these numbers are like essentially like fourth quarter expenses for all of these things, assuming that we spent 100% of what was allocated, which we won't, probably. So I don't know if it's worth noting somewhere on here that the likelihood that we won't spend this amount, that it's based on the budget, but also are these numbers also going to be look really different since we're going to be doing this a month from now? Like,
They
will
might
these
be a little
then
different.
just
I mean,
like,
I could, get the actual cost for what's missing and adjust these.
The bottom line number should be fairly consistent. It's just the stuff above it might change.
I would not, we're gonna post this and then just leave it. I
It
wouldn't,
just, yeah,
I wouldn't update it for
it has the
November.
dates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just to make sure I'm clear, so what we're posting is the PowerPoint slides and the letter, the kind of we invite you to comment on the letter. I mean, we're not posting the letter, the report you wrote out for.
No, we
or-
can post all of it.
Okay, I mean, because that makes,
Whatever.
I mean, like, anything to kind of help people, like, who are picking at something to give them more information, I think that's helpful.
Recommended sheet.
Yeah.
Just-
In the memo, I think,
Yeah.
I'll update it, make the correction to that $7 million number, and then what
Keep
else?
in mind, most people aren't
know.
going to do it, but there might be one person
Yeah.
somewhere that's like, why is this like this? And then we're giving them something to go off of.
Yeah.
go ahead.
So it's clear for everybody.
We're good?
2.5 million is, we don't touch. 5.5 million, 5 million, we're recommending that you carry over as capital at one. And there's still $3 million, which will be, I don't know what we call it, but it'll be
Fund balance.
fund balance.
FUND, not FUN.
Yeah.
Well, it might be FUN.
All right,
All right.
let's keep moving.
Next slide. So this shows a breakdown of how we're gonna use that $27 million. So the big ticket item on here is personnel costs. The black pie piece is personnel. It includes salary and benefits. And if you use the $27 million as the base, this is 54% of that. The next biggest chunk is this $4,839,000 in capital. Why is that different than 5 million? Because some of our capital costs are actually allocated to different line items in the capital outlay. For example, computer equipment is in a different line. I'm gonna look at how we group our different accounts on the reports that you get quarterly to see if I can make it clearer, but right now this is how they're grouped and that's why that number is different. This $2.4 million for facilities and maintenance, that's the operating, so that's changing light bulbs, paying the utilities, putting gas in our vehicle, that sort of thing. So that's in addition to that 5 million.
Okay.
Library materials make up 7%. The programs, events, marketing engagement line item includes literacy and outreach. The numbers were so small that I had to combine those just so they'd show up on the graph. So they're all kind of lumped together. And then administration, cafe, and board governance is 3%. And IT support makes up the last 5%.
Security and facilities and maintenance.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's like million of the 249,000. Yeah.
Security personnel are in facilities and maintenance.
I think we should break that into can you break it into a separate, just so that it's another piece of that pie? Is that possible? Just security? Cause like, I think it's important for the public to see that number.
Is it safety and security or just security?
Security.
Just security?
Also helps us kind of gauge, what we're doing.
Okay.
And
Right, and it's interesting, that's a personnel cost.
Yeah.
You know.
It does pay
So
for
the
people.
personnel line is,
It's a contract. It's
Yeah.
not personnel.
but
Yeah,
it's still people is what I'm.
Yeah, it is still people.
So really, what we spend on people, you have to look in a few different categories to really know.
So for this slide, all personnel costs are in that black piece of pie. They're not, the other colors are operating costs only. They're
Right.
on personnel
But
costs.
we just talked about one that's not, which is
Well,
security people who are contract.
yes,
Split hairs, but
right,
it's people we're paying for.
right. They're not employees.
And in terms of the percentages of the different categories, this is still pretty similar to what we had in the prior budget, or is there any category that's maybe significantly different? The capital one? Okay.
So
Yeah.
we've talked about this for the
Yeah.
last 2 years, right? So you factor in, even if you say whatever, a third of the cost for physical maintenance and security contract, let's say 6%, we're still at 24% in terms of maintenance. Any library that was not brand new buildings will shut.
Hmm.
Ours is a result of having such a backlog of maintenance and
Right.
good maintenance, frankly. So, you know, over the course of time, as we address the backlog, it's a reasonable expectation that that number would come down. So if we're not building a new building or renovating a new building like Meadows or something like that, it should not be 20, well, I mean, I should hope it would not be 25% of our budget that we're spending solely on buildings and maintaining.
If you're really curious about how it compares to last year, an attachment
Yes.
variance column will show you like
Okay.
if we increased it or decreased it.
Okay.
And if you have specific questions about why, I can answer those.
Okay.
Of that 5 million carryover, it almost maps perfectly to that 18% portion. Where's the other 161K go?
It's likely under IT support.
Okay, there's some one-time costs in there.
buying a projector and things like that.
Okay, yeah, I just
Yep.
curious.
What is considered administration?
David, me, Celia, HR, finance.
Oh,
Are you-
okay.
So your salaries are part of that?
No.
or- No,
So that sliver is, board governance is in there,
Staff development.
Legal fees.
legal.
okay.
No, that's under personnel. Staff development is under personnel.
Auditor,
Auditor.
Legal, auditor, all the board governance,
Board food, board memberships and travel.
Okay,
library supplies.
but not the personnel costs for you.
I
folks?
can,
Personnel one.
I'll look into that and footnote that there, so we have it, but it's stuff to run the
Yeah,
library.
the reason I
Legal
asked was
consultant.
my like when I see administration, I think administrators, which then I would think would be in personnel, and that's why I was trying to figure out what else it would be. But yeah, so I was just curious.
So call it office supplies would also be too focused. So it includes things like our collection agency fees and
Okay.
different
I think
services.
administration is fine. That's helpful for me to understand
Okay.
what you mean by
Okay.
that.
All right.
I kind of get uncomfortable like linking board governance to some of that other, because then it looks like that's really heavy. You know, like, I mean, if you just look at board governance by itself, it's just,
Oh, yeah, that's-
you know, like 180,000 or something like that. And it just lumping it in there would just raise some questions of like.
But we break it down on the,
Yeah, but I mean.
on the other sheet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, I think, you know, that
It wouldn't show on this graph if you just broke it out. It'd be, the sliver would be so skinny you wouldn't see it.
that's why she had to put them together.
Yes.
But I mean, it's such a small piece, and like the cafe is just 15,050, whatever it was here. I mean, you know, it makes it look like that could be like a really big piece,
What could be a really big piece?
like the cafe, like, you know, like, I don't know, like it's
Those three
it's
categories.
just, when it is just 50,000 and board governance is 180 or something like that, right? But it's a chunk of the other stuff. I would just look at it again and just see if there's a different way of aligning whatever administration is in a different way.
You could just put administration and then footnote what those things are, like,
Okay.
yeah, that might just, you know, And you could include other things besides cafe and board governance. You could say
Okay,
legal fees, auditor.
yes,
Yeah.
because those are bigger than any of those things. It just looks like we have a cafe. People would say, where's the cafe? They wouldn't think of the,
But
the
if-
coffee bar is the cafe, you know.
That's just supplies for the cafe, I'm guessing,
Yes, it is.
which we get money on when we sell, so.
Is this just a grouping of convenient, like there's no, so, yeah.
So it would show up.
Like you could put the cafe in with programs, events, marketing,
Yes.
engagement.
I could.
If we wanted to try to avoid the situation where someone
Yeah.
looks at this and goes, you're spending a huge amount of money.
Is that what
subsidizing
you
a
prefer?
Yeah, it probably makes sense.
15K, you said? Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna make any
Cause
difference
it is
to the
a
numbers.
way where
But it-
that we are like, it is the,
It's basically
activation
a
of that
marketing,
space.
yeah, it's a
It is an
marketing effort.
an event, yeah.
Okay.
15 great, it's not gonna change.
No, it's not gonna change, but it'll change where the word goes, which
Mhm.
makes people happier.
In the MO a little bit. Okay, next slide. So we're gonna look a little more closely at personnel costs broken down by salary and benefits. So total personnel costs are 14,585,762. 70% of that is salary for staff. 10% is what we estimate to be Cigna health insurance. Another 12% is the employer contributions for the para pension. Emeritus vision and dental make up 1%, and then other benefits make up 8%. And other benefits include the estimated employer contributions for health spending account, lifestyle spending account, life insurance, long and short-term disability insurance, eco passes, leave administration, tuition reimbursement, professional development, and workers' comp.
Anytime we have another category, if it's easy to footnote it and just list those things, it's probably not a bad idea to do that.
Okay.
Anyone who sees that's gonna go, what is other benefits? Then you're gonna have to answer the question in public comment instead of on the slide.
Are you saying in the graph just under?
Yeah, well, I mean, however it's convenient, but
I would say
an
it's
asterisk
from a-
next to other benefits and a
Yep.
text at the bottom that says it's
Do
these.
that.
things. It's just,
You're not gonna be able to read it.
yeah,
I'll do it.
other just invites the question though.
All right, let's see. So, the good news is, when we came to you last meeting, we were anticipating a 20% across the board increase in a health insurance and dental and vision. The good news is our broker was able to negotiate it down to 9.7% for the Cigna healthcare. And then, the dental care is at 12% increase, and there was no increase for vision. So what this enabled us to do is I adjusted the numbers down from the projections. And then we were able to add another position to literacy and outreach that we weren't sure we could afford. I think that's it for this slide. So at the bottom in the box, it says 66% of total operating budget. So in the previous slide, I said personnel made up 54%. That's if you include capital. Here, I didn't include capital. Capital often fluctuates. This is probably a closer number to the amount or percentage of personnel costs that contribute to the total budget. So 66%.
This might be a good time for my question here.
Okay.
Go back to the outside. So,
Well, we'll decide that.
well, I think it is. So I think your rule of thumb was like in the 65% range of personnel to budget. So we're doing one-time capital expenses of 5 million. And I'm assuming the library is going to have capital expenses every year, right? You know, but not 5 million, but what is that? Like 2 million, 1 million, 1.5. So by that rationale, we either have to have excess funds raised out of interest or whatever, and which screws us, rates go way down. But or we have to reduce staff, right?
We get more money in our property tax.
Or we get more money.
Yeah.
So the estimated for next year when they do the assessment is our budget will go up by roughly 5%, which is just a little over $1 million. That money would be then dedicated to capital. I mean, Jennifer and I talked about this quite a bit. So by adding in the outreach staff, which was requested, from our modeling, because we spent 5 years putting together these models about
Right.
just back. So we leapfrogged, we have leapfrogged with both gun barrel and with the outreach expansion. The scheduling of our growth over the course of
Oh, that's true, yeah.
15 years, right? So we're somewhat ahead of the game. And yeah, I knew that it topped 65% of the just total operating cost. But the part that is difficult to discern is really like, where does it go in terms of revenue in the future? It's capped at whatever, 5.5 by the governor's office. Whether we're exempt from that or not, I can't really say at this point. I think some legal people would say yes, other people would say no. It's yet really to be determined. I think 5.5 is a reasonable expectation, which would mean about $1.2 million in addition to our revenue. So it jumps from even now where we said it was 21.4 and it's actually 21.6. Next year's will be again 21.4 or 6. The year after that, it's going to jump to perhaps 23. Right. And so again, that we would then go into capital, but I also expect that there'll be carryover really for the next 2 to 3 years until we get Meadows online. And then we're at capacity, right? Like, so what staff do we add? There was no modeling for the outreach department to grow any bigger than it is going to be next year, right? There's no modeling we did. There's no modeling that shows the Canyon Theater having more staff than it has right now. So, if we decide to do some of those things, we will have to make approximations, I think, in other staffing, not necessarily layoffs, but as vacancies occur, we evaluate those programs to see if they're bringing in the bang for the buck. As well as I do, that visits to this building specifically are, half of what they were prior to the pandemic. Our staffing levels for the public services within this building are higher than what they were prior to the pandemic. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I think our assumption is that the numbers are going to come back in 2 years. If they have not, I think we probably need to do a reassessment of some of the staff of the service areas for this building. Our security contract. We have 4 full-time security guards in this building at all times. That was in response to the commitment that I made publicly on Channel 8 to say we were going to do everything we could to prevent any reoccurrence of the incidents of drug use in the library that we experienced in 2022. We've now had almost 2 years of success? Right. So almost 2 years of success. I love the guards. I think they're doing a great job. I think it's nice to have 4 of them, but we might be spending a little bit too much on security.
And you also have guards at every other, I often wonder, do we need some Meadows? Because they look forward as all get out. And
And the George.
Reynolds, but those are free.
Are nice to have when there's an incident.
I get it. I get it.
The number of incidents are wildly different at the branches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get it, and it does reassure.
So I think that,
Response times are very different at the branches too from the police.
Yes.
so you also have to model it, your costs are gonna go up, like we have to give raises and, energy prices and collection amounts might go up or whatever, so, some of that 5% is gonna be eaten by, inflation. And then, and so, yeah, I just think, we'll have to watch that number, that personnel number, because,
It's evident where growth is occurring.
yeah,
The library to us.
yeah,
Right, like so. Programs like the Canyon Theater, a lot of growth.
Yeah.
61, Studio 24, constantly packed. I mean, those are all labor intensive programs. If we staffed them to full capacity that we are able to do at present, right? Like, and so is an adjustment necessary in the next 2 to 5 years if just regular people walking through the doors is still at 50% and there's, enormous demand for getting into building 61? Probably, like, again, but it's not tit for tat, right? Like, so the average transaction over here takes 3 to 5 minutes. The average transaction in Boulder Reads is probably a year and a half, right? Like,
Yeah.
you stay with a person for a long time. So they're very different calculations. And it would be, yeah. It's not just simply, we can't just shift from one to the other. It's
Well,
not
and we'll know,
apples and apples. It's
we'll
definitely,
know in June and July what our assessments are gonna be. So, cause they'll reassess everything in July and you can start building, planning off of that. And we can look at where our capital spend is it at, mid-year and anyway, what we've committed to and, okay. All right. That was my question.
Before we leave this side, I also want to mention that in the memo, in one of the questions we will ask you at the end is if you want to fund the employee cost increase for benefits. If you do, that would add an additional $81,000 to the benefits budget. So 8,000 to dental and the remainder goes to Cigna.
It's the average increase for an employee.
There's a table in there. We can get to that when we get to that.
That's the related question.
It's in the memo. on
Page 26.
26, yeah.
What's the answer?
I don't need the answer right now.
It looks like. Let's see. $473
Plus the 43 for
plus
dental,
43.
so a little over 500.
Yeah.
Is the cost to the employee.
If they take family level benefits.
Yes. Assuming they are on the family medical and dental. plans.
Yeah.
That's the worst case scenario.
Did they have an increase? Did they have an out-of-pocket contribution
Yes.
this year?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't recall.
Okay. So this side's a little busy. I apologize for that, but I wanted something that could kind of show the big picture of total employee compensation. So this slide shows how we get to the total personnel costs. So currently our employees' salary for a year is 8,853,642. If we add the 18 new employees or the 15 new FTE, we're going to have to add $911,000. We're recommending a 4% increase for standard employees, so that's not substitutes, but that's for full-time and part-time staff. And that's going to add $312,000. And then we had a compensation study conducted. We're kind of in the midst of it, but the big part, the dollar part, was done in September. And there's probably 10 or 12 people that we're either recommending they get a promotion because we need to distribute the duties in that area a little bit differently. Or we just need to adjust their pay up to a market pay. And that total increase would be $119,000. So total salaries are the 10 million, total benefits are the 4 million, getting you to the bottom number 14,585,762. And as I said before, that's 66% of the operating budget, not including the capital. So what this does is it meets some of the goals that the the former board and this board have of becoming an employer of choice. We're finding that recruitment is pretty easy for most of our jobs and that we have really generous benefits package and it's attractive to people. Also, there was a goal for the median annual compensation for a full-time employee be greater than $60,000 in a 2-year period. We met that this year with the $4,000 increase that everybody received. And that information is in the packet, but we're exceeding that with these adjustments. Also, if we add we make the promotions and adjustments to market pay, 61% of our employees will be paid slightly above market rate, and 39% will be paid at market rate. And lastly, just for kicks, there's a potential cost savings because these are kind of moving targets. So we have scheduled the recruitment of the new positions out according to a schedule that we feel is reasonable. And by doing that, we'll be saving some money because we won't be paying those positions for a full year. As well as whenever we have a vacancy, there's like time between the time the person leaves and the time we hire somebody else. And so those two amounts combined, I roughly estimate at the low level, we'd save $434,000. That's not deducted from the total cost. That's just room in our budget. It's probably going to be more than that, but I'd say it's not probably going to be less than that either. Does that make sense?
So the employee market rate breakdown in those two percentages there, that is what currently exists. That's no change. The only change is that a promotions adjustments to market pay, that 119 relates to 12 positions.
Yes.
Those market rate breakdowns are specifically for next year's pay rates, not current pay rates.
Correct.
Say that again. What you just
I think
said.
you just answered our two questions in opposite ways. The market rates are for what we plan to pay people next year. Those are not reflective of the current market rates that folks are being paid today.
So those 10 of those are, I'd say 9 of those 12 positions
Yes,
would be paid under market if we did nothing.
yes. Okay.
So if we make all these changes, that's the breakdown.
If we don't make these changes, there is a percentage that is below market rate today.
Right.
A greater percentage that's below market rate.
Well, right now, there, on that slide, there's 0% below market rate. So there'd be a third category of below market rate if you looked at the two numbers today.
It's covered anyway, right? But we agreed to carry over the city's payment policy. So we did review, it's a long drawn out process, but it's simply stated, it's like all of the jobs were reviewed by an outside counsel to see how they can, how the job. These people, job descriptions, but they were not being paid. The jobs required promotion, get them in the right classification. Others, it was just the market pay was a little bit off by, some of the job descriptions. That makes sense? Class and comp is something that the city had done prior to us leaving 2-3 year period, but we're kind of committed to doing it every 3 years, reviewing all jobs.
Okay. This slide shows where we're adding the new staff. So we have 4 FTEs, full-time equivalents, so that it's not necessarily the number of people or positions. We're adding 4 in internal services, so there are going to be, is it 4?
Yeah, one in finance.
Oh, yeah, that's because I'm thinking facilities. So internal services on this slide, and maybe I need to footnote this, is facilities, HR, finance, and Celia, David, and I. So that makes up that 21%. We're adding 2 in HR, 1 in finance, and 1 in facilities. For public services, we're adding 7.5. That's primarily gun barrel staff. And then literacy and outreach, we're proposing 3.5 FTE be added there. Okay. So some of the fun stuff now. So new gun barrel library costs. I thought it'd be interesting to look at how those break out. So we're assuming 12 employees whose base salaries will be $654,000. And then general operating of $429,000. General operating includes supplies, courier costs, programs, custodial services, landscaping, security, waste and recycling, water, electric, and rent. So quite a little bit. So to operate the branch for a year, it's about $1 million. And that is 5% of the current district operating budget, not including capital. There'll actually only be 10 of those 12 assigned to Gun Barrel. There is a 1 IT position and 1 facilities position that are being added. And the IT position didn't show up on the previous slide because we've already hired that this year. But anyways, they were budgeted so that we could support this expanding services. So we needed more IT support and we needed another custodian for this building. All right, and then also just for perspective, the one-time costs, we're anticipating the renovation, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and then some repairs that we've had to do will be in the range of 1.5 to $2.5 million. I expect that a good chunk of that might be encumbered this year. If we get our act together and we get some of the orders placed for the furniture and equipment, and I think we're just days away of getting an estimate for the renovation piece. We budgeted this year in 2024 for the opening day materials collection, so that'll come out of this year's budget. That'll also be encumbered. We have to place those orders, I think, any day now, in order to have the books on site. And then there's another $50,000 in the 2025 budget for the grand opening party, the outreach we have to do, and the advertising. So that's Gun Barrel.
The problem I saw was it said it's opening in late summer,
Summer.
not early summer.
Well, so, you know,
Or spring.
we're in the process of putting together some plans, right? There is, once we have them, we have a rough sketch.
Yeah.
Have to go to mechanical and engineering.
Okay.
Once we have those back, and we expect that to have that back in the next few weeks, then it goes to permitting. So it's likely, we're estimating about 12 to 16 weeks to get a permit. Once that happens, probably the construction phase is also about 12 to 16 weeks.
Yeah.
So in March, April, we have to order the sorter now in order for it to arrive in March, April. And then, you know, that's also, when Jennifer was talking about staging the hiring of the staff, I think we have that planned also for March, April.
Yeah.
So it all kind of comes together then, and there needs to be some time in the building for which books arrive, furniture arrives.
Yeah. I ride by that building like 3 times a day. So just,
Still saying summer. I honestly do not, I don't think it's before summer.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
like, I don't think it's before June.
Don't get my hopes.
But it could be the end of June, it could be middle of July. I don't really know until we actually go through the permitting process.
Okay.
Because, yeah, if the permitting process, it is a change of use, it's not a public building before, it will be a public building. There are requirements that we have to do in order for it to be a public, and those things will have to be certified. It's zoned for it, so it's not, that shouldn't be a major hurdle, but
Oh, they might make us do like a land use review or something.
we don't know. You know, we expect the planning process to take good time. Land use review, I don't think so.
Okay.
The area is zoned for commercial and or public use.
Okay.
I don't think
Just like getting all the bathrooms right and.
bathrooms is a big part of it. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, when you look at that $1.5 to $2.5 million, like, I don't know what the bathrooms are gonna cost, but it's a chunk of that money.
Yeah.
We have to do the bathrooms differently, and it's very much restricted by code.
Yeah. Okay. All right, keep going. I'm just
Okay.
excited.
It's terrible to have to talk about bathrooms so much, but it's real.
The other area of investment for next year is in our literacy and outreach department. We're proposing an overall department budget increase of 42%. The majority of that 42% is staff. So on this slide, those boxes in orange are the new positions. So in literacy and outreach, we have 3 different divisions. We have volunteer services, outreach, and then Boulder Reads. So we're proposing to add another volunteer program coordinator that may also do some direct support to Boulder Reads. But we're finding that we need more volunteers, and so we need another coordinator. We hope to expand our offering of ESL classes and Spanish as a second language classes. So we're proposing to hire a coordinator to do that. Another outreach specialist to kind of support the team. And then we're hiring a temporary citizenship class instructor, and this person has taught our citizenship classes for years, but her funding came from the library to, what is that group? Is it Amistad? Is that the one?
El Centro Amistad.
Might have been that.
The Camry.
Anyways, we sent money there, they paid that person. Now, we're just keeping the money and paying that person directly. So it's kind of not an ad. It's temporary because it's not, a full-time position and it's only a certain amount of time during the year, so temporary. Intercambio, that's it. Thank you. And then lastly, we're proposing to add a half-time literacy specialist. This would make the current literacy specialist full-time if we're able to do that. And the next slide gives you a little more detail. So in the photograph, you'll see Rosina and Susanna. They're the women in the middle of the photograph in the gold and the striped shirt. They're members of our outreach team. Rosina is also a librarian. And they are at an event. I think this might have been one of the Boulder Housing Partners events that we put on through our outreach department. So we take things to sites in the community and have programs for people to participate in. I did want to mention that our outreach department was awarded the Boulder Housing Partners Partnership Award this year. We do a lot of work with Boulder Housing Partners. They're a great partner, and we're really honored to be able to accept that award. And that is all due to this team's efforts. So on this slide, you'll see a couple of numbers highlighted. When I created the slide, I mistakenly pulled in the entire amount of the grant from the foundation. For literacy and outreach, they requested 95,000, so I just adjusted those numbers, and they'll be correct on the next set of slides. Let's see. So what we're going to do with all these new staff and some of this new grant money is we're going to improve our system-wide coordination and expansion of outreach. So our outreach team will kind of be the coordination point. We have a lot of staff in all of our locations that support the outreach and actually do some of that. So the outreach team partners up with our librarians and other staff to go out and do these events. They want to add 2 new multicultural events at the libraries next year. I mentioned the ESL and Spanish literacy classes. They want to add a Spanish conversation group.
Is that for people wanting to speak Spanish?
Yes. Yes. Practice their Spanish. Mm-hmm. They also want to do an adult literacy marketing campaign. They've titled that campaign Literacy for All Opportunities for Life. And just really get the word out about all of the different resources that are available through that program. Part of the grant money that they requested from the foundation would go to fund expanded children's literacy book programs where we give out books to kids. And then we also plan to do a literacy program impact study. to kind of set a baseline for how we gather data and evaluate the impact of our programs. So that's it for literacy. The other initiative that we had a strategic priority for is making data-driven decisions. We plan to conduct some surveys, focus groups, and impact studies. So we're going to renew the patron use and satisfaction survey. The last one we conducted was around the master plan in 2018. This will include some analysis using GIS mapping with some overlaying of cardholders and survey respondents and other demographic data. That kind of expertise is outside of our staff's capability, so we'll be looking for some consulting help there. But largely, our communications team has some expertise in running and evaluating surveys. We're also going to be doing some more surveys, and Carolyn mentioned that they're already started collecting user information. So there'll be a survey or focus groups or both, and some of that information will be collected and given to you, so you have it too when you make your decision about investing in either the current Carnegie building or finding a new space for the archive. And then I mentioned literacy program, impact study, and a programs and events impact study. All right, then the capital budget. So this picture is gun barrel being demolished, the interior being demolished. This was the first day, I think. So I think that behind those gentlemen is where the desk was. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of things happen in there. So we're proposing that the $5 million in carryover for capital and one-time projects will address some of our most critical deferred maintenance items. It will help us complete the renovation and furnishing of the Gun Barrel Library facility. And then it will also help us address patrons' evolving use of library facilities. At your retreat, we talked about reconfiguring the second floor here at the main library. So that's one of the and adding some new meeting rooms and that sort of thing. So that's the capital budget.
But I thought good, the $5 million there, I thought what we did like 2.5 million this year for the gun barrel. Some of that's gonna be carried over to 2025. Okay.
Mhm.
I guess that makes sense because it's gonna happen in 2025. Okay.
Our favorite topic, deferred maintenance. So there's 3 of our facilities were evaluated by the Cumming Group in 2023. And they produced a report that made recommendations for immediate, short-term, long-term, and then mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. I had C on here. I don't know what I was thinking that day when I made this slide, but anyways, that's what MEP stands for. So it's highlighted because I corrected that. So you have, I think we shared at either the last meeting or at the retreat, this schedule of costs. So this is right out of the Cumming Group report and gives you the range of costs from low to high and what they included in their estimates. So what we're proposing, well, what we've accomplished already is the immediate needs for the main library. We've done some roof repairs. We've corrected the balcony drainage on the other building, and we replaced or in the process of replacing water stain ceiling tiles and drywall. So yay, some progress is made there. So next year we're proposing to tackle some of the short term. So that's the salmon colored stripe at the bottom. That range is $511,000 to $625,000, and those things include cleaning and repairing stone masonry and pavers, replacing glazing with failed seals, replacing window and skylight sealant, cleaning and repainting metal railings, and replacing the flooring in the 1974 building. And then we will likely tackle some of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And those are replace various HVAC components. So we're looking at a supplemental HVAC units for the children's area, and I think the 92 building over administration or somewhere. I can't remember where.
I think it's mostly in the 74 buildings.
Is it 74?
First and
Okay.
second floor and bridge.
Okay.
We had excessive heat this year that swamp cooler just isn't, many of you experienced those days. It's
Yes.
Not pleasant, especially in the bridge and the children's area.
So we're getting estimates for that now. And then we also desperately need to have the programming on our HVAC controller redone and updated so that it's actually functional. So that's main library.
I have just a point on this slide, not so
Mhm.
much the substance, but I find the header confusing that it says 2023 cost estimates.
Mhm.
Because to me, that sounds like money we would have been spending in 2023. I know it's estimates that we obtained in 2023, but
Mhm.
I don't know. And I am sitting here trying to come up with a better way to phrase it, and I'm failing. So, but like,
Just take the year out, maybe.
Take,
Yeah.
take that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
because I'm not sure it's relevant. I didn't know if there was some
Look at
reason
the
to include the year, but if there's not, then
You
yeah.
could
we
put
can-
a star, you could put a star that says
If we want to say.
estimated in 2023 or something.
Yeah, because it's likely that they're gonna be different and higher.
Yeah.
Each year we get farther away from 2023.
But one thing about the deferred maintenance is sorry,
No.
is like, it's one time thing, but these things probably aren't gonna get cheaper
Mm.
in the future. 'Cause we like,
I mean, in the Cummings report, if you remember, what we had requested was the low end cost is replacement with the current asset. So you're
yeah,
replacing boiler with a boiler. The higher end was for looking at more sustainable products,
yeah.
more contemporary and lower impact.
So I think you lose what we did in the way that it's set up. I would suggest like maybe those cost estimates get aligned with that chart there, because that's where that is, right? And that's referring to, right? Those costs there from low to high. Am I
Yeah,
following this right?
That
Because we sort of miss, if somebody's viewing it, you miss that, that we did these immediate things, that these were addressed in 2024. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I would like what we've accomplished or something instead of immediate, but we did this, this was done. And then still to do are these other things. And the cost estimates relate to what's down there.
Okay.
Because I think,
You just put addressed in 2024. Instead of
did.
immediate,
yeah,
Oh,
but
immediate off of there.
yeah,
yeah,
Okay.
like,
and then,
because we did that. Otherwise, I don't think people would see that we did it.
You want me to remove it from the table?
Completed,
Well,
completed in 2024.
okay.
no, I think it's good. The check mark is understandable.
Okay.
And then,
Is it?
Is it? I don't know about that.
Well, I saw the check
Yeah.
mark under construction
Yeah.
immediate. I saw the check marks in the upper left and I assumed that's what was. And I'm not that smart, so.
Oh,
True.
So I was able to figure that out, I think.
and then you could say construction 2024 or something like that.
We just changed the titles.
Yeah,
We said like instead of immediate address.
Instead of immediate.
Address issues addressed in 2024 and then change the title there.
Okay, this is for Reynolds. So not much has been done, that's listed in the Cummings report. We still have some immediate needs that we'll focus on next year. Removing rust from door frames, sealing them, and then we have some kind of drainage issue going on in our meeting room. if there's room in the capital budget and we decide it's a priority, we could dip into some of the short-term items. Or if they become more immediate needs. And those are replace asphalt roof shingles, replace window sealant, replace sections of deteriorated sidewalk, repair a crack in the driveway, and repair water damage in the ceiling of a book sorter room. We may also need to address some of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And that's install a relief fan and insulate the hot water piping. And lastly, Carnegie Library. So we're currently working on that 3-tier estimate for you all, the different priorities. This year, we have completed the immediate items for Carnegie, and that's repairing the roof leaks and then also repairing the water damage on the inside of the building. So likely next year, we'll have to focus on short-term fixes. Maybe we'll go further if you all decide you want to invest more money into Carnegie, but this is what's on the short-term list, and then also on the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And that is it. So I can take any more questions you have or input on any more input you have on the presentation. And if we're done with, once we're done with that, then we have some questions for you all to give us some direction.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. It was a lot, but that was super helpful. Thank you.
This presentation, sorry,
Okay.
this presentation gets published for the public. Did you say you want to give a version of it before public comment at our next meeting? I would just make that version shorter.
So what would you remove? Like
I think
deferred?
if we're gonna be doing this for public comment, we probably need to like cut it down to half this many slides, or we're gonna have a 90-minute discussion before we even get to public comment. I think it's fine to release the full version online. I would just maybe have an abbreviated version if you're gonna give it again for public comment.
Okay,
I think you can get rid of the maintenance stuff.
the detail.
Yeah. Or,
Two concerns about that, right? So it's
okay,
definitely not sexy. It's why it hasn't been done in 20 years.
yeah,
It's also like a huge chunk of. Sure.
yeah.
So I don't know what the right balance is.
We did have, we didn't have any public comment last.
Yeah, maybe we have no public comment, in which case it's moot.
But,
Kind of in the between budgets, right?
right,
Didn't have.
we might have public comment.
Well, and hopefully I've answered most of your questions, so you all won't.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we would not have a ton of questions or move things around or change
Mhm.
categories.
Yeah.
We're kind of making those decisions now based on what we want.
Mhm.
I guess if there's any striking public comment that moves your hearts to change other things around, then we would have to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, I would just, again, maybe no just public comment and it's moot, but if we're expecting a large number of folks for public comment, we're trying to convey this succinctly, I would probably
We can probably
try to get the main points across before half the public leaves.
So Jennifer and I could talk about it. I mean, so I think this is a brilliant presentation, honestly, and I.
No.
And
It's awesome.
Jennifer went to extraordinary lengths to explain a lot of different ways to break out the money. It might be easier for us to streamline it and run it too, so we're not, but it's important for you guys at this juncture to kind of know where money's going. The public, I don't know how concerned they are about like breaking it out with capital, without capital, and so we can look at some ways of maybe streamlining some of the presentation for the.
I think,
But I think it's very important that you guys.
I think that.
Well, and
we
the full
might-
version should definitely go out online. I think it is good information to
But
have.
Andy, I think we might have press there. Those
Yeah,
are the
I-
only people that did come last year.
Right.
So I think, I personally think we should give the whole, I think about this. I know it's gonna,
Your call.
it's
Yeah.
like, I think we can do it in 30 minutes. And if, like, we were more than 30 minutes this time.
I love
90 minutes.
We were asking questions.
Too.
So just,
There's some slides we could pull, like.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
Don't know that you need that one. For the public, because of the pie charts really cover it.
Yeah, the pie charts cover it.
This one,
That's great. Keep that.
okay?
Yeah.
You could move quickly through these range capital
without-
things.
yeah, without-
you-
without
We
us.
needed the detail, the public, not
Yeah.
necessarily, but.
Yeah.
I mean, I trust you guys can sort it out, but I would bear in
We're gonna focus on whatever we're gonna focus on these each of these, but maybe not go into as much detail.
I would just aim to get through it a little faster if we are giving it again for the public. If you want to do that.
Maybe not answers to ask so many questions.
Yeah, right.
We'll shut.
That's all on us.
Okay.
Okay, so
I think it's great. I really liked the actually detail. And I think Johnny Teeter, if she were here, she would be very happy that she can see where all the money's going. And she can ask you some questions. About it. Maybe she'll be our one public.
that'd be a little.
Yeah.
So like,
Hilarious.
knowing how many times Johnny wrestled with the city over what we were spending on what and how the budget worked, so. I'm gonna send her a text later and say, you'd be really pleased. She'll be like, I'm in South Africa, or wherever she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Egypt, or whatever.
Okay.
You need answers to these questions, I take it?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, one, we kind of addressed those. Does anybody have any other pressing things? Two, will the Board of Trustees support the appropriation of the actual balance of the 2024 investment interest for the one-time projects in 2025? That's the 700,000 you're saying? We'll just look for nods. Yes, no. So
Yeah.
carry over. Okay, I'm seeing a yes.
Wait, do we have a sense of what the one-time projects are?
Yes, it's the surveys and.
Oh, that
one.
piece. Okay.
And your budget basically assumed we were gonna answer yes, right? If we say no here, you have to go remove things from the budget.
No, I used, like, if we just leave it as is, it's $521,000 in interest. If you say yes, actual balance, it's more like 700.
Okay, but you budgeted for the 521. So the only thing you're asking here is can you use the extra 100K?
Yes, and I think what this will help answer is how Kim creates the resolution for you all.
So it's, yeah, okay, yes, my answer is still yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm seeing agreement on question number 2. That was for the record. Will the Board of Trustees support the appropriation of the actual balance of the 2024 operating budget and unencumbered capital budget for capital projects in 2025?
That's this slide, remember?
The 5.
Well, this is above the 5 million, right?
Yes, so
You're asking, can you spend that additional 3 million at the bottom of this slide?
that's your decision. I have included the 5 million in the budget you see. If you want to say yes,
Well, so
we would appropriate $8 million and spend as much as we can
Okay,
to address those.
my feeling is only because this is, I'm speaking first in my comments to the board, is that I would feel comfortable with the 5 million. And only because like we have, if something comes up, we'll have that. If we're talking about rent, my big thing is long-term planning for meadows. And so if something comes up and we've spent it all, then we have to make decisions or hard decisions or take a bond or, do something. And I would say, I don't think you're gonna be able to spend the 5 million, so I think we should keep, that's my 2 cents.
I was gonna say something similar to that. I think we need to identify it for a future use. So it's not just, here's $3 million sitting there.
Right.
And maybe it's long-term capital fund or something I was thinking of Meadows too.
Yeah.
Something like that makes more sense to me.
if we said yes, take this extra 3 million, what would you actually do with it in the budget?
It would just get carried over. What the only difference would be like if Meadows happened next year, right? If suddenly a building was available, it seemed like to all of us, because we would come back to you, we wouldn't have to go through the extra step of going to the budget step of appropriating the money in order to spend it. It would already be appropriated. And so you could say at the meeting, like, let's do it, rather than
us going through with Ken. Remember last year, Ken came and we did a reappropriation of the budget. We readjusted the budget. We changed all the stuff on the webpage. We moved all the money around mid-year. So that's the only difference. And frankly, like every library district I look at does it differently. So many of them, we have to come back to you anyway. We're not going to go buy a building in Meadows
But if we,
before asking you. So it's just, we have to come back anyway. It doesn't matter to us.
so if we appropriate the extra 3 million now, it just sits in the budget as excess. It doesn't, you don't have other ways of spending it.
Yeah.
So effectively, all this does is saves us a step in the future. This still ultimately becomes extra carryover at the end of next year if we don't buy anything with it.
I mean, technically, David could find a bunch of under $50,000 projects. I mean,
Yes, and technically we can fire David if he does.
The 3 million is kind of in the wheelhouse for if we were to buy a boat.
Yeah.
It's.
Or if you want to heavily invest in Carnegie, you might need some of that money.
So hearing that, I mean, my preference would be just allocate all of it now because it saves us having to come back and do it again. But we're allocating it with the understanding that this is not go find 3 million more to spend things on now. It's,
We-
this money is sitting there for us to use.
I think
later.
it'd be a challenge to spend the 5 million on what we've listed.
That would be,
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So if we allocate the 3.1 that's in this, I know it will be a different number, but if we allocate that, all we're saying is that this is spendable money, or do we have to allocate it
Yes.
towards something specific?
You're just saying it's spendable money and then we would
But then you'd still have to
know
come to
what
us.
your priorities are. And if something comes along for Meadows, that's likely what we'd spend it on with your approval.
So like we could just combine like that 5 million and the 3 million and make it the capital and one-time expenditures fund, right? And then it would,
Yeah.
it would just be, then we would pull that drawdown from that as needed, but okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me if it's really just administrative and what we call things and it's not actually going to change anything about the plans for the money for next year, then that makes sense. That makes logical sense to me.
for simplicity's sake, that would be my preference.
I'm okay with that as well.
It still seemed too vague to me. I'd rather park it, but you know, that
Oh.
was the will of the.
How do you?
I agree with that.
Does the budget go up by 3 million then, 30 million? From 27 and,
Would, yeah.
The revenue would go up. The expenditures would not,
right?
unless we find something to spend it on. How difficult is it to do a new allocation? That sounds like that's,
Okay, we
You
need
just
to
do a resolution.
read it.
and-
We need to-
yeah.
doesn't require like 30 days in a public hearing or things like
I
that.
don't know if it required 30 days or not.
No, they should require.
I don't think.
Okay.
I don't remember.
We didn't do 30 days, so it was like a budget appropriate.
I mean, it's, if that process is easy, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If that process is hard, I would say let's just do it now.
It's pretty easy. I mean, we did it in one meeting.
Right.
It goes back to Sam's question. So I mean, like, if you look at I'll give 3 different libraries, High Plains, Douglas County, and Arapahoe. Arapahoe allocates all of it into a capital and one-time fund. Ambiguous, but readily available. Douglas County, reserves a line that says, you know, future capital expenditure fund or whatever else like that. High Plains just puts everything in reserve. And so for High Plains, it's just like all the money just goes into reserve account, like not necessarily restricted reserve, it's just reserve account. So they all do it differently. It's really up to you what you want to do. It's no hassle for us to do either way you want to do it.
So I guess let's just do a straw poll, of the trustees, because I don't think it really matters that much, but what your preference is. Do you want to allocate all of it? If that's your preference, just kind of raise your hand. Kara, 3. Oh, now we're tied.
Yes.
So you have 7-person.
Oh,
Opposed, yeah,
okay, you want to do 5. You
Yeah.
wanted to see the.
yeah. I just think it's too
And then-
much locked into capital and it just could create
And so we would,
something that we don't want to have.
and the 3 million, we would, so it's tied. Tom's not here. So a tie means what? Keep it the same?
Yeah, I mean, I'll change my vote to the 5 million.
Okay.
In that case.
I don't think.
It sounds
really
like it
matters.
doesn't make that.
Not
big.
anything to like, it was really easy, but I do like Sam's idea of saying, this will be what, like, potential reserve for,
So
Building.
how I see
And we can say
explaining
that
our
either way.
reserve approach to the public is there's a 3% requirement on your table from the state, right? We've added operational reserves of, what is that, David? Like
12%.
12% above that. And then we've created this capital fund reserve with an eye towards Meadows.
Yeah.
Something like that.
the facility
That's
acquisition
fine.
for Meadows.
And I can make that clear on the slide if you want, that the 3 million is for another capital project such as Meadows, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
I mean, is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's the same.
Yeah, same.
We're getting to the same endpoint.
Yeah.
It's just how we get to the endpoint.
I think that the optics though look different on the slide. That's why I thought keeping it the same.
Next question.
Okay, sorry. Number 4, will the Board of Trustees support appropriation of the anticipated grant funds before they are awarded?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's effectively how you've written the budget already.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
I mean, really, this is more of a question for you, Chris, than anyone else. When does the foundation actually decide to grant the funds that the library's requested?
Well, it's a question for you, like, the foundation is independent from the library district and, we've got very clear guidelines now that say this is a early next year decision. We're in our budgeting process and we've got every reason to believe that we're headed towards full funding. We also need to finish our year and we reserve the right to revise our budget if something happens that causes our thinking to change. So really, your question is, in the worst case, can you find a way to absorb, you've only allocated like half your request anyway.
yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's written in a fair enough way.
And if we didn't get
I don't know.
funding, we,
I'll put it this way, I don't have any reason to be concerned about the way it's written.
And the foundation will make its actual decision in February, March.
Yeah, we're gonna continue to, follow the grant process that we've outlined in writing with you guys.
I'm fine with this. I mean,
would use other funds or we would,
you showed us almost,
some of the programs that we anticipated using that money
we
for.
also showed 5 million on a slide of potentially saved money from delayed filling of roles. So it sounds like this is the
100,000.
level of,
500,000, not
480.
yeah, 500,000, sorry.
This is the city. It's just the library.
I'm sorry.
How come your slide has 7 and mine?
Yeah, I know. Mine has 5. That's
Okay, does the Board of Trustees wish to cover the increased employee contributions for medical? This goes back of $73,000 and $8,000. I had one question on this. Oh, and let me ask my question because that might be my answer. Didn't we peg like what percent we were gonna cover? Like, did we say that like we're covering 80% of the costs or 70% of the costs or whatever of the?
Like in perpetuity or?
I mean, when we did the because like that's what my company does. It's like they cover, this is the cost of the plan. They cover 80%. We didn't say anything like that?
We did publish data about what we were covering. It was higher than what the city covered by 2 percentage points. That was not a commitment in perpetuity. That was a commitment for that first year. If I can editorialize just for a minute, I feel like it's a hard decision, right? You're passing on a cost to the staff. It's just a percentage of what the increase actually was. I'm afraid it'll be a decision you have to make every year, right? And so skipping a few years may mean that at some point in the future, there is a larger increase that we're looking at adjusting those percentages more substantially from what was initially shared with them, where we were absorbing the cost at 2% higher than what the city was previously doing. So, that percentage would hold. I think in this new instance, we're still picking up a large portion of the difference, but if we forego it this time, then 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, we're gonna be looking at a situation where we're gonna have to say like, oops, no, we need you to pick up X percentage higher. That happens in many employers, like it changes from year to year. And our healthcare costs will be volatile until
we are fully staffed and the insurance company has records of each one of them, right? Like that is, like next year, we're adding more people. We added people this year that are being calculated towards the 2025 costs. In 2023, it was all just wild speculation where they were trying to get a bid, right? So that's what we got. Now we see the first year of added employees. They have data on some of them, so the costs go up based on the knowledge that they have about what insurance needs they have. And then next year will be the same because we're adding another 18 people, whatever it is. And so there's gonna be a new group that they're gonna look at their insurance needs, and then our costs will also adjust upwards next year too. As we grow and reach capacity and aren't adding a bunch of new staff each year, then it's my expectation and what I believe from our brokers, that's the cost will stabilize. Assuming that the balance of health needs of staff remains like what the tables show you they will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The first
We're also
year,
gonna promote the clinic benefit, because if you go to the clinic, you don't, if the cost of your visit doesn't hit insurance, it's no cost because we cover it in the membership we pay.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that we can encourage more participation in that, and that would reduce our premiums.
Well, one way though is that if we're gonna take up the cost every year, then there's no benefit for people to go in the clinic, because the board will suck that up. But like, that was kind of my question, like this $80,000, is that, if we take the whole thing, then we're paying a bigger percentage than we were.
slightly out of $1.4 million, it's not probably a percentage, but close to.
No, but like. We
We've
promised
increased the
we
employee
promised
split.
to reimburse for a certain percentage of the cost of the benefits, right? The $80,000, is that
That's
That-
employee cost,
was the employee share?
yes.
So, but that's not based on the percentage that we not promised, but we said that this is the total cost.
Correct. If we add this to our employer costs, then effectively, we're increasing the amount of employer contribution we give to each
Got it.
individual employee.
That's what I thought. I wanted to make sure. My,
What's the employer percentage today that we pick up? Yeah,
It's 82. No, but I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I think,
it was like 82%.
yeah, I think the 80,000 that you see here is roughly 18 to 20% of the total cost of our increase in interest. That makes sense.
But it's not across the board, right? It's only certain employees.
Not every employee takes it.
Right. And yeah, so I have
Some are
concern
under-
about
some
that.
are on other plans.
Right. So
We base the cost off of assuming 100% enrollment, I think. Right, of the increase for the new employees. Like, so we have a budgeted amount for 18 new employees, assuming that they will participate. Right?
Yes.
They won't necessarily all participate. We don't know.
My 2 cents is that we cover 82% of this additional cost. I don't know.
well,
Well, we already are.
that's the number as structured.
Oh, okay.
This is the
This would be above the 82%.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if we don't pick up the cost, the employee percentage stays constant.
Okay.
Cause I feel like we're passing the whole cost on to the employee. We are picking up the additional percentage of what
Got it.
the
Okay.
employer pays, and this would just be making them pick up the additional percentage of what the employee pays. So
Okay.
the ratio stays the same.
Yeah, and if I heard David correctly, that would be your preference, or you are cautioning us that going forward, we might run into trouble if we deviate from.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you'd look at it and think, this is a small number, let's just take it. And I was prepared for you to say like, oh, let's just take it on this year. But I
didn't understand.
just this year, because next year we'll see it also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand the.
And whether or not we're gonna share those costs as they go up, I think that's not an unreasonable expectation. I don't know of employers that just say like, yeah, there's an increase, 20% increase in cost, and we're just gonna eat all of it. I have not worked for anybody like that.
Yeah, I would, my preference would be not to pick it up, if only because it encourages, it aligns incentives a little better for everyone to try to minimize these costs in the future. I do think this table is very helpful, and I do appreciate the fact that even factoring in the extra costs compared to the average raise, folks are still looking at an annual total salary increase of over 3%, which, you know, hard to predict, but assume 2.5% inflation or so by the end of this year. So you're still dealing with a net raise, even adjusted for inflation, even with the extra healthcare costs. So it's not like folks are suddenly having less real take-home income.
Right, right. They're still getting,
Just because I think it won't ever come up again. So we talked about the clinic, right? So the clinic is a great benefit in terms of, if you go for a visit, it doesn't necessarily ding the Cigna, and our healthcare costs are not adjusted necessarily according to it. It's unfortunately the realization that quite a lot of medical visits now, the response of the physicians is to prescribe some kind of medication. Those then do ding, and so there's only, it's not 100%, right? You don't, it's not 100% of the people who are going to the clinic doesn't take Cigna. They go in, maybe the doctor prescribes medication that does ding Cigna, and so then Cigna interprets what may be wrong with this employee based on what the doctor prescribed, and it just, you know, it's just reality, right? Like most doctor visits, many doctor visits required that many doctors just prescribe pharmaceuticals for everything, right? And so, great that it improves the health, but not necessarily a benefit for us with regard to that clinic program, because it's not 100% of people going to the clinic for visits. If you go for a broken arm, fine.
You aren't gonna go to the clinic for a broken arm.
Oh, you can you? I thought that was one of the things you could, okay. Wrong.
Cool. So, but the problem is, Andy, with your, though, is now we've just eaten 864 basis points, 0.86, whatever, 86% of our 82%. So now we're only gonna be reimbursing at 81.25.
Yeah, I think that's right.
No, I think that might be great.
That's right. So we're gonna eat 0.86% of our, so we were reimbursing at 80%, 82% of the cost. So my thing is like, I'd like to keep it close to that. Maybe we take a portion of this, and I know we're talking about $50,000, but take a portion of it, because if we keep doing that every year, then we're gonna have to eventually make it up, or we're gonna have to start eating it every year. So like, that's my rationale. You see what I'm saying?
Not really.
So we're reimbursing at 82% of the program costs. So if we tell the employees that they're gonna now take,
Theirs went up 10% and ours went up 10%. Ratio should be the same.
that's if we reimburse everything.
No.
And okay.
I mean, we could break out these numbers, but we could break out the ratio today and then the ratio with these. I could be wrong, but.
As
the
I
way
understand it, we are already covering the increase to the employer contribution.
We're already covering.
Oh, yeah, we're covering the 82%.
Yeah, we're
Is
not
whether
passing
we
on.
also want to take on the increase.
I
in
think
the-
our ratio should be constant. Again, I haven't sat down and worked the numbers, but I
It is.
think that should be constant.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else is what changes it.
Yeah, then we should just keep it. I think, agreed,
Not cover this.
and not cover this. Sorry,
It's okay.
but that's to us too. Sam.
Well, and I mean, yeah, so like cover the same percentage.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate that it's going up, but that's the reality of
Yeah.
healthcare.
Insurance.
Yeah.
Hopefully encourage uses of the clinic and things that bring down people's medical
Well,
expenses.
And not to discuss now, but I am interested in whatever qualitative even data about use of the clinic y'all can collect, because it was intriguing to us when we first signed on, and now we're a year into it, wondering, do people like it? I mean, I've heard a couple of anecdotal things, but I'd be interested.
We just did a survey of employees about benefits, so there'll be some information there, and then we can get some data from the clinic itself.
I think the data from the clinic was like about 50% utilization, which is higher than we anticipated for the first year. So I think that's.
More.
All right, well, we already got,
Anyone else have input on this point?
No, I'm fine with that.
yeah. I just wanted to make sure we're still covering the same amount. That's what I was trying to understand. does the Board of Trustees have feedback on the memo attachments and or slide deck that the staff will incorporate? I thought the memo was great. I thought the presentation was great.
Yeah, the memo is, I love the memo. Maybe
Fast for the
if,
thing.
if only because we just had this discussion to this table in the memo that we this out, maybe just add the employee split and note that it remains constant. If that's easy to do, if it's a big lift, but
That's not true. Come back to us in a.
yeah, given we just made a decision based on that, it's probably good to highlight it.
The letter, so the letter was requested.
Yeah, I like the letter.
But, and how do you want to go about that? Do you want to supply me with the list and then I can
Yeah.
send that, or do you want to come in your name? The invitation.
If you could send it out, I will give some names. I think it would be great if you did that. So I'd like in the press release, like David, your name attached to that. And we did sometimes it.
Oh, there was a comment, well, we could talk about this in trustee matters. And then final question, does the Board of Trustees have any input on the draft infographic, press release, or invitation?
Which? That, okay.
Very graphical, because I'm very good at that, but
Packed info though.
it's packed with info. So I would, if any feedback you have on this, over to communications and they'd put polish on it.
Have that in our fence?
Where is,
It's page, it's,
Oh, that one. Okay.
this is the right page?
Yep.
Page 33. In the very small number at the bottom. Yeah.
So earlier this year or late last year, we looked at several infographic examples. I don't know where we landed with that. I tried to pull like if I was a patron and I didn't know anything about the library budget, what would be interesting? And I tried to put it on here, so. It's all for editing.
So we have multiple different pie charts and how we've sliced this up.
Yeah, so this is a different one.
Yes. Do we want to just standardize on the one we talked about on the other slide, or is there a reason you prefer this one?
I just simplified it. I didn't put any of the extra
Okay.
dollar amount. And I divide, and this is, each pie piece has the total cost, so personnel and non-personnel. So I know that my library spends 18% of its budget on children's and adult services, all included.
So I would just look at this infographic.
Mhm.
I would maybe beef up investments in building maintenance.
Okay.
If I read that, I was like, oh, HVAC and some seals on the windows and that's $5 million. You know, I would, like put more in all the stuff we talked about
Yeah.
as concisely as you can.
Maybe I can pull some of the kind of nicer projects off that big list in the memo. Mhm.
Because this is, yeah, it's real stuff and there's a lot of it.
Andy, to go back to your point, we did the separate graph. Your request for the retreat, because there was a question about how, where, and if you fold all this stuff in, so this is not how any of our data reporting works. Each time requires some labor to put it all together, but if you don't think it's worthwhile, then
I'm okay.
we won't do it, but we did it for you guys, I think maybe the retreat.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, there's all the different ways you could slice this and
Yes.
could fight all night about which one's best. I think this is fine. I agree with your point that it's useful for folks to think about things in terms of how do I use the library and how much money is being spent on that use.
The only other thing I'd say is pull the security out of building maintenance and make it its own category.
Okay.
That's what we did on the other thing.
can I pull out board governance out of the 32%? Because I always think it looks like we're spending a lot of money on board governance.
Do you, I mean, is it necessary for you to mention it? Because it is less than 1%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess you could just eliminate it at that point.
Okay.
Administration and IT, I think,
Administration
probably.
and IT.
Representative.
Yeah,
I put it on there because you wanted it on your budget sheet, so.
yeah.
But it was put in our budget and separate out what we were spending that wasn't in administration, but
Okay.
everybody's always gonna look at that and ask.
Those are expensive sandwiches. Um,
Like, how would you be getting paid to do this?
We raise the cows and the turkeys. so.
There's some open questions on the timeline.
Yeah,
Do you know what, do you need anything from us or do you? know
I
what's
was
out?
wondering, did we set a time for a second reading if we need one? Is it just your next business meeting?
we're gonna approve and review the budget on the 19th. There's no.
So there isn't gonna be a second reading.
No second.
Okay,
And it's not legally required that we have one.
No,
The second reading?
It's okay. No.
I mean, this is technically our third reading of this budget, so I feel like, yeah.
Cool.
okay. And then the meeting date to certify the mill levy. I wasn't clear what that was.
I was planning on certifying the mill levy on the 19th if,
Is that when we do it?
um,
Yeah, hopefully is the 19th.
Okay.
so. It'll be before, it has to be before December.
15th.
15th, yeah.
Is that our last meeting?
I think that actually might be our last meeting. Let's see. Here. Okay. December 18th is our last meeting, so,
We should double check on that though. 'cause
Yeah,
I
if
felt
we
like
have
there
to
was
send
like
a-
a- There was like, I felt like Kim said there was like
Yeah.
a specific date.
yeah, but last time, I mean, when I certified we certified the mill levy before, we just wrote a letter. We didn't have to vote on it as a board. Unless everybody wants to,
That's right. That's
you
right.
know. If, I guess we can take comments on, we'll check by the 19th.
Yeah, okay.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe not in this group, I'm sure there are boards that probably might fight over it. All right,
Okay.
we're beyond our time frame, and I,
Have this scared in 10.
I really appreciate this level of detail.
what's that?
You're welcome.
An hour and a half.
No, that was great, Jennifer, really, for the job.
Yeah, yeah. But it was good questions and it's really our first time as a board looking at a real budget, so. That isn't guesses and
Mhm.
fairy dust. Okay, treasury report. We can note it on the back.
Yeah, I
Sarah?
mean, I don't know that I have a lot to report. You all have in the packet, the, I don't want to get this title wrong. Balance sheet and the statement of activities. I mean, I don't know if there's anything in particular. There wasn't anything in particular that jumped out at me that I wanted to sort of report on. If people have questions, we can talk through any of those questions. I thought actually what might be helpful is just to get a flag for all of you that I would love, and maybe not tonight, but I would love maybe some feedback from you all about what kinds of things would be useful for you in a treasurer's report. I think in the early days of this board, it maybe looked different than it will look going forward, because we had different kinds of updates. And so now I think I'd be interested to hear what the board would like to hear about quarterly from me.
I think from statement of acceptance, right, like, so this is what we're basing off 2025 budget. So a lot of the money we had ballpark for the 2024 budget were our best guess. We'll have a much, I think, next year, like reasonably percent received and spent. So the last column, maybe at the end of 3 quarters, you would, everything was on target. And you can see that it's wildly off, either above or mostly below, but some things above. And so that is some of the adjustments that Jennifer was, we were taking actuals from the operational expenses and putting the budget forward. Next year, I would expect that at each quarter, we would be roughly in the, we should be roughly in the wheelhouse of tested spending in, 5%, 50%, 75% throughout the year. But you can see kind of where all of that excess revenue carryover is going to be for 2025. We've under expended, the consistent level of under expenditure.
And I think to Kara's question, if I'm looking at this as a board member, wide variances might have a footnote and an explanation in a or be presented orally by the treasurer, but it's kind of nice to have them on
Paper.
Paper, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I mean, I definitely, and this is probably because I was the first treasurer, but like, I want to see this. Like, I want to be able to go, this is where we are. Like, I don't want us to go long periods of time where nobody's seeing this. Like, we have a fiduciary duty we have to,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
you know, be mindful of. So yeah, so
No, I guess what I'm asking is not whether to present this, it's asking whether there's other things that would be helpful for you all. Like if there's additional information in addition to to presenting these, you know, these pieces of the budget. You know, if there's, I mean, I think like Sam's point is a good one. I just wanted to know, like, as we move forward, like, is there anything else that would be helpful for us to be thinking about? And like I said, you don't have to tell me right now, but if you think of something, that would be helpful for me.
Sylvia, do you want to see this more often, or maybe every other month or something?
I
Or
think
you
we're
think
kind of,
it's okay?
yeah, I think we are just kind of feeling it out right now. So like, I mean, I think you said quarterly is when we look at this report.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Yeah.
the first meeting after the end of the quarter.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, I mean, let's see how that goes. And then if we feel like we want to see it more often, then maybe.
I think
You
more
know.
often, I'd like to see more often. Like quarterly seems too,
Maybe every other meeting,
yeah.
Yeah.
every 2 months. Would that be too much of a burden? Or it doesn't take very long to go through, so. And it's actually kind of nice to be able to look at it. Kara, would that be okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right,
So every other month, which is some of the time, every other meeting, basically.
yes, every other meeting, most of the time, yeah.
Just quickly out of curiosity, while we're looking at this, what's the $600,000 in other revenue that was unanticipated and is in the actuals?
That's a fun one.
There's the grant. library.
Yeah, it's,
No,
that's
the
under
600,000
This
was
is-
from,
This is the other
it
category.
was like the city emptied their
Is
like.
that what this is?
The library fund balance,
Balance.
Okay, I remember us discussing that. That is what this is.
Excise tax.
there's a footnote there that says what it is. But yes, it's,
Oh, so there is.
I just had a question. I just wondered how the setup with Colorado Trust in that account, like, was that just a smooth process and easy? And I mean,
Yeah, remarkably, and yeah, so long as we notify them, I can't remember, it's like by 11 o'clock. We can withdraw funds the next day, the next day with no fees. So that, we are planning on next year as revenues come in, the money will just there. So we'll earn interest on the revenues we receive between February and May. And then those expenditures throughout the rest of the year, we'll just draw it down monthly, or I don't know if she's decided to do it monthly or every other month. I don't think we've drawn down anything yet, but we plan to, I think.
yeah, she's of the mind that we leave in there as long as possible.
she's,
Adrian,
okay.
Chief.
All right, director's update.
That was it, right? The budget.
Okay. And then we have one trustee matter, and then we'll be I believe one trustee. Andy?
Yeah, this is my fault, so I'll try to be quick about it. So I sent folks an email. I'll kind of give the brief overview and then happy to dig into any questions here. The CU Law School has a law clinic, a tech policy law clinic that has existed for a while. I was a member of it. Thank you. I was a member of it while I was at CU, and they historically specialized in a bunch of different areas, but primarily areas around accessibility has been one of their big focus areas, and then areas kind of around security research and things of that variety, less applicable to us. They actually have a new director now who's also big on the national security surveillance side of things as well, but they're continuing their accessibility focus. I approached them a couple months back just because I felt it might be a good connection, and I know we had some of our previous discussions around some of the accessibility obligations of the library. I connected them with Amy, who's our IT director, who's overseeing a lot of that accessibility stuff, and just A, felt like it'd be a good point of contact to have, but B, the clinic is actually interested in engaging in a project where they would we would engage them free of charge to provide us some additional guidance on accessibility best practices for libraries and things of that variety. I think this would be a starting point. There's room to expand this if we like how it's going. It is technically a formal legal engagement, even though it doesn't cost us anything, though. They are a student clinic, but they are overseen by a BART attorney. We would need Doug to basically sign a letter of engagement with them. So kind of wanted to get folks feel for, is this something we're interested in pursuing? Amy's interested in it. she's obviously the one that'll be getting the kind of direct help, but I think at some point they'd also be presenting to us and giving us some additional guidance as well.
Can you just for clarification, when you say accessibility, like, can you pin that down a little bit?
Yeah, so this would be specifically in the areas of how does the library ensure our services and materials are usable by folks with various disabilities, right? So it's going to be a lot of digital accessibility, it's going to be a lot of screen reader and things of that variety, but also that's part of the reason we engage them is just look at broader best practices in the space. So I think part of the goal here would be to get beyond the bare minimum of what we have to do under the law and to start to think about what actually would look like the best practices to support the rider community here.
I was in a clinic at the law school and I loved it. So whatever work or cool things we can send them to do,
All right,
I'm down for.
I'm up for it too. I think it sounds
You
cool.
okay with it?
We're super excited about it. And they wrote,
Yeah.
a kind of an engagement letter. And so that's what I'll need Doug to check. We don't have a scope of work yet, but we will develop that as soon as we get Doug to sign it down.
Thanks for
Not
the,
have it tonight. but I'll
Yeah,
to use it.
yeah.
I think it's a good connection to have at the university. I think it might prove fruitful in the long run. So this is a starting point.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, let's just, guys, get with Tom since he missed this meeting and we had covered a ton and just go over the budget with him individually and answer questions.
You could do the whole presentation again, Jeff.
But also, you know, answer any questions or comments and then have him review the video. So,
Awesome, thanks. We didn't really
Very
get
good.
to have.
all right, thank you. I know this is a huge, these are our biggest meeting. This is really,
Thanks for
these
sitting
next two
here for
meetings are our
3
biggest
hours.
meeting of the year. We're all tired, but legal matters, anything?
My job is easy today because there was no legal update.
Woohoo.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
And be
Thanks, Kara.
email distribution.
Thanks for staying. I know you're 45 minutes.
Andy
So-
Taylor.
Raising her hand.
Yeah.
Just waving.
Okay, good night.
Pregnant.
Okay.
Well, no, because